Hello, this is Ed McKeever, and after this song, I'll see you on the Tampa Morgue.
My sister and I went to see a place where death lives not alone. Bodies to lie, they all have died. A resting place where death calls home. But as we looked through the door, our eyes could not believe the sight we beheld, the stench that we smelled of rotting and thriving disease. They're dancing in the morgue, dancing in the morgue. They're dancing, they're dancing, they're dancing, they're dancing in the morgue. My sister was there with John Doe the Third. The march of macabre had begun. The merriment swells, a nightmarish hell for all of those who lived on. They're dancing in the morgue, dancing in the morgue. They're dancing, they're dancing, they're dancing, they're dancing in the morgue. Time grew late, dawn was near, pushing and shoving began. The fastest it ran, quickly ahead, shelves on the walls were the beds. They're dancing in the morgue, dancing in the morgue. They're dancing, they're dancing, they're dancing, they're dancing in the morgue.
What's up? And thanks for listening to the Tampa Morgue. This is Tony with my co-host, Mr. Ed Webb. What's up, Ed?
Mr. Anderson, what's going on, brother?
Same shit, man. Another holiday on the way. We've got Thanksgiving coming up here, and it matters when you're listening to this, but for us, it's 2 days. Just it's getting cold out. And how's everything over in Florida right now?
Not cold.
How you got? My
Not
sister was
cold.
saying it's like 70s or 80s today. Right?
Yeah, I think I saw on Thanksgiving it's going to be a high of like 68. Yay.
Yeah,
But it'll be down
68,
to like the upper 40s or lower 50s for the low. So, I like that shit, man. I like to get up in the morning and go outside when it's just, sunlight and fucking drink some coffee and have the weather not like, so when I come in, it looked like I came out of a rainstorm, Usually it just you can't sit outside, dude. Sucks.
68 here. Everyone would be wearing bathing suits right now and jumping around.
Exactly. Or Canadians.
It's-
Dude,
yeah,
I
today
remember,
it's zero. Today it's
I remember
zero
going to
here.
Universal like in February one year, and dude, we're all fucking bundled up, like, sweatshirts and long sleeves, and these fucking Canadians are out there in fucking cut off shirts, fucking going on the water rides, and I'm just,
Yep.
when I heard him go, that was pretty funny, good, eh? Hey, I was like, oh, there it is. They're Canadians, because there's no self-respecting fucking Floridians out there in a cut-off shirt.
Yeah, you can always tell when people come to Florida and like in the winter and they're swimming in the pools. And
Or
it's
even from
like,
up north, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like winter for us, and we're cold or whatever. But yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the track we opened up with, by the way, was a band called Northwinds from Belmar, New Jersey, that was dancing in the morgue off the 1990 album Sleep with Evil. that came out on Black and Blue Records. I actually remember that band very well. They were so in 1990 there was a split they did with Bloody Mess and the Scabs that came out on Black and Blue Records, which was two totally different bands. It was kind of a very weird thing they did, but they put both full lengths on one CD. And it was actually on one side it was Sleep with Evil from North Winds, and then on the other side was a band called Bloody Mess and the Scabs, which they had a full length on there called Sixth Grade Field Trip. So I don't know if you remember either of those bands, Ed, but Bloody Mess, he used to play with Gigi Allen at one time. But each on that CD, each had an individual booklet with the lyrics or with all the information for the album that came out. But Black and Blue, they put out the Gigi Allen releases, some of the Gigi Allen releases. But yeah, that was in that lineup. It was Terrence Brown on bass, John Ratcliffe on drums, Steve Statland on vocals, and then Dave Stein on guitars. And Dave, I actually, when Generic Christ played in Puerto Rico in 2011, Dave was actually part of that band Infernion that we played with.
Yep.
And and I was actually like, I remember the guys like, oh, Northwinds, like we actually have the guitar player plays with us now. So it was a total trip to me because I completely remember when that record came out. But yeah, they actually put back then on Black and Blue, there was also that song that we just played was actually also on a comp called Music to Make Your Ears Hurt that came out in 90. Also had like Leviathan, which later became a band called Scumbag, Gigi Allen, Cedar Street Sluts, and North Winds, and a couple others. But
it's a great name for a band.
Yeah, right.
What's the name of your band? Scumbag. I mean, that's
Scumbags with a K. It was SKUMBAGS. I think they changed in like 96. But yeah, North Winds from Belmar, New Jersey, long gone. They put out a demo in 89 on Pentagram Records, which may have been their own record label. I don't even know. And then obviously the Sleep with Evil. But yeah, so that's North Winds. That's what we opened up with. In about 15 minutes, we have a guest, Ed McKeever. Ed McKeever from Showtown American Pictures. He's a filmmaker. I'm looking forward to talk to him. He was a former security guard, so that should be interesting. Now he's making some horror movies, and he's out of Tampa. We cover a lot of Tampa stuff, and he is a filmmaker out of Tampa. And they're I know the film they just did, or the last film they did, I believe, the Beast film, which we're going to talk about. That was mostly shot in Tampa. So yeah, we're looking forward to talk to him. He should be on in about 15 minutes.
Can't wait to delve into those security stories.
Yeah, right. To me, that interests me. I'm like, working security, and he was the big security guard for the tri-state area. He ran that whole connection there. So to me, he was dealing with, you figure, Atlantic City, Philadelphia, all those areas. He was dealing with some major shit. So we'll see what he can share with us about that.
Just think about those movies with De Niro and Pesci, up in the Atlantic, the mafia.
Yeah.
Just think about that area. So, he's running security in that type of area. Just think about how fucking brutal that must be. Not like running it at the Mid-Florida Amphitheater in Tampa. You know what I mean? I mean, up there, if you got people coming in from Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey to see shows or whatever, any kind of boxing, MMA, dude, you know what I mean? That's some fucking...
Imagine what he's seeing too, which I'm sure he can't tell us all about. But imagine, every show, every concert, they all go through that area. It's like you always know on a tour pretty much, especially, earlier back in the day, even you always knew that those shows were going to go through those areas. So imagine this guy's seen some shit. Well,
I always think of like Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg, where you see the bullshit they did backstage and how, he got to see behind the curtain when he joined the band. Because remember, he was in the crowd singing to the dude, and now he is the dude. And you see behind the curtain, those guys, the security dudes, see probably everything because they see the front, the side, the back. You know what I mean? Yeah, it should be pretty good, man. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, and then he had the balls to move to Tampa to start making movies. I know he made some movies up in Pennsylvania too, in those areas, Jersey. But I'm looking forward to talk to him. He'll be on here in about 15 minutes. But what's been up with you, Ed? You said you've been checking out some new music this week?
Yeah, man. Whenever I'm at the gym, if I'm on Spotify, I always go to new releases, because sometimes it's not like in the back in the day, right? We used to, for months, it would be boom, boom, something's coming. I can remember when South of Heaven was coming out. It was like the lead up to that record coming out was like you were at the store at 9:59 waiting for that motherfucker to open to buy that record, and we were.
Oh yeah.
It's gone because it's even like we talked about shows in Tampa. There's a show tonight that I didn't even know. Cattle Decapitation. I saw it this morning.
I saw that,
playing,
yeah.
and I'm just like, what are we doing, man? I'm all over Facebook. You know what I mean? I look every day just to, I don't post a lot, but I look, and I saw like somebody posted it today, and I'm thinking, man, that's a pretty big show for you not to somebody to hype up as it's coming, because there's a few good. Immolation, I think, is on this tour.
Yeah, so it's actually, and I'll actually mention these really fast because I was going to mention some show dates before we talk about the album that you've been listening to. So you're talking about tonight at the Orpheum, which obviously if you're listening to this, you probably missed it or on your way up there. It's cattle decapitation, immolation, Castrator, which is Robin's band.
Yep.
And a band called, I'm going to totally fuck this up. They're a newer band, I believe, from Ohio. Sangwa Su. I'm not even going to attempt to say the name of the band actually. But
I know which band you're talking about.
Yeah, but they're also, and then they're playing on the 24th actually. Also, well, they're playing tomorrow night, aren't they?
In Orlando
at the Abbey.
In Orlando.
Yep. Yeah, at the Abbey in Orlando tomorrow. Also, some other shows I'll just mention really fast so we can move on with that. Goat Horror, Withered, and Spider, which I've been talking about Spider for a while.
Is that Sunday?
Hell's Headbangers. They're playing at the Conduit on the 24th, and then the 25th they'll be at the Orpheum.
Okay, so I think I think the 25th is Sunday. I think.
Yeah, so it's Goat Horror, Withered, and Spider. And Spider, they got the whole I'm trying to think how to explain it. They have the whole, they got the face paint on and stuff, but they're more, I don't know, they're a killer band. I really like the new record that came out.
Yeah, the 25th is Saturday.
Is it Saturday?
Yeah, so they're playing Tampa on Saturday. That's a great, honestly, compared to Sunday, because, people going back to work from Thanksgiving off, that's better for good. Because Goat Horror, how many times have we played with Goat Horror?
Yeah.
They're great dudes, first of all. People think,
yeah,
oh my God, Goat Horror, they're a bunch of evil
awesome
fucking
guys.
Satanists.
Very
Dude,
cool.
Fuck yeah, man. Every one of them.
Sammy, Ben, they're all just cool guys.
Yep.
Great bands.
And their ex-bass player, didn't he pass away a few months ago, like last month or 2 months ago?
So I tell you, I'm kind of bummed because on that bill, they got that band, like I just said like twice, Spider. If being over here, I don't get to see that show. So I would have definitely hit up one of those two shows. But that's one thing about Florida. You guys get I know a lot of bands do skip Florida now, they say on the tours, or they go to Georgia, right? So, I think, what was it, King Diamond, the last tour last year, I think it was, or Merciful Fate, right? They went to Georgia, but they didn't come to Florida.
Didn't come here, man. And that sucked because we remember I was going to go with Bryce. And then when I started looking, the cost was just, and actually I was going to wind up doing something with meeting up with Death Metal Dave. And, we were going to do something, but when I looked at the cost, I'm like, I love Fate, man. And I haven't seen them in many, many years. But sometimes when you look at the cost of these concerts that are coming, like Pantera,
plus if you're working, you got to leave work. And then if you're going to Georgia, you got to it's just a whole big.
So I had two choices. I could rent a car, because you don't want to put miles on your car. So you rent a car and then you got to stay in a hotel. So now you've incurred that expense plus gas, or you look at the plane and then you got to figure out a way to get to the hotel and then to the venue if you don't rent a car. So you
got to deal with the airport bullshit.
Yeah, man, it's just ridiculous, man. And I was just like, I was grateful when King came to Orlando because I don't mind driving, an hour and a half, but 8 hours each way to Atlanta. That's just too much, man. I've done it, driving to North Carolina 4 times the year before for my son when he was going to college. That's just too much, man. I can't. I love music, but it's too much.
Yeah, it makes sense, and then you got the only other show that I've been trying to like kind of make a show list before we come on sometimes so I can, there's just so many shows. So, but I did see the Greater Gods from Sarasota, which is a doom metal band, is playing with An Acid Trip from their St. Pete, Black and Punk, it says. Side Piece out of Tampa, band called Jar, which is a Tampa hardcore band. And Spider Lily, a Lakeland sludge band. And that's a free show at Munchies 420 over in Gulfgate, Florida. So yeah, that's the shows I have listed for that. Also on this show, we have coming up a couple guests. We have Tuesday coming up next week is Bill Owen from Purgatory, which obviously later became Iced Earth. But we're gonna have Bill on. He was around during the Purgatory days. Obviously, a Florida band. So we'll be talking to him. And then on the 30th, which I think is Friday, right, Ed? We
I
have
believe so.
Count Gore Duvall coming on, which is AKA Dick Dizell. He's been around forever. He's a horror host. We've always said we want to get those guys on the show. So this will be our first horror host, which I'm really excited about. He appeared Washington, D.C. DCA from like 73 to 87. He was originally named MT Graves. But he had obviously the Creature Feature program. He was the first horror host to actually have a show on YouTube now, which he still runs weekly, where he actually shows horror movies, has the full get up on.
Yep. That right there was the cool part is he's still doing the full get up, man. Cause
full get up.
If you're going to YouTube, 90% of the time you're wanting to watch video, you know what I mean? Especially like in a horror genre. I mean, it's, podcast, you'll listen to it. You don't have to watch it, but if somebody's going to be doing that type of thing, you want to see him in the get up, man.
Yeah, he's still doing conventions. He's still, like you said, he's still wearing.
It's awesome.
I think he has the setup at his house where he records the show at now downstairs. He was telling me, and yeah, he, like I said, Count Gore Duvall, he'll be on Friday, and I'm really looking forward to that. And we have Paul from Master, Paul Speckman, coming on. What is that? December 5th.
Yep, and that's going to be. Yeah, man. Paul's. Damn, how many records does Master have out?
I can tell you right now: 14 full lengths, 2 EPs, 8 demos, 10 splits, and 5 live albums. And I could be off by 1 or 2, actually.
So that should be about a 5-hour interview. So that's awesome.
And he has, and they have a new one coming out, of course, too. That we have number 15, I guess, on the full length side. Saints Dispelled, which will be out on January 19th on Hammerheart Records out of the Netherlands. So we'll talk to him about that. He was in Abominations, Blunt Force Trauma, Death Strike, remember Warcry, the old band Warcry, which I think Rick, the singer, just passed away this year. And Cadaveric Poison. So we're going to have Paul on from Master on December 5th. We're looking forward to that. So that's a couple of our things coming up. Busy. It was the other day we had, and that's the thing is, like, we took a couple of days off this week because we're kind of getting organized because we just started realizing we have a lot of guests coming on. And actually next month, December, it's going to be pretty crazy. We have some really cool guests coming on, which I'm not going to announce yet that me and Ed know about. But so it's trying to get organized.
You will be surprised. That's all I can tell.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep organized. But yeah, so let's talk about the new Sadist, man, that you which obviously came out, Nuclear Blast. What'd you think?
Yeah, man. So I caught a couple of videos because they've been putting them out between Steve, been posting the videos, on Facebook to watch and stuff. And I put it on, and from the first song, which is called First Blood, all the way to the end, it's fucking typical Sadist, just fucking blistering, fucking guitars, of course, DiGiorgio, how many times I sold my gear because of that fucker. I mean, that dude is, like I said, man, I've said it 100 times, watching him play is definitely an honor because he's effortless. I mean, I think he was one of the best additions to Testament because he makes them sound, really good. But yeah, this new Sadist is, it's incredible, man. I've always been a Sadist fan. I saw them, I was lucky to meet them at Morrisound when they did Swallowed in Black.
That's awesome.
This guy, Trader Ed, he had hit me to them. And then, I went ahead and had started picking up whatever they had the one before it called Illusions, which it just, it was so fast. You know what I mean? It reminded me, because if you remember, Chuck always wore Sadist shirts. Um, you know, so I was like, what is this Sadist? But to see them, because they took many, many years. I mean, I think I think their last record, if I'm not mistaken, was 2006. So 17 years, man, in between records, if I'm not mistaken. Out
Do you
for
notice
Blood, I
that
think was from.
everyone's putting out videos? Like, I noticed that's the thing, right? When you put out, you remember, like, it seems that now when you put out an album, you're putting out like 2 or 3 videos. Like,
Yeah,
it's
before the record even comes out.
before, because they put out "It's the Sickness," "Ride the Knife,"
Yep.
And "Scorch and Burnt,"
Yep.
Anarchy, or
Yeah, man. And honestly, like when I heard the first song, I was like, okay, if this, usually sometimes when somebody puts something out, they put out the best song, and you're like, you listen to the rest of the record, and you're like, fuck, why didn't you put some? Because you kind of you ruin it. You know what I mean? It's like,
now it's 3 or 4 videos. It's like, wow.
but then when they put the second one out, I was like, oh shit, it's still stepping up a notch. And then the third one, and then when I listened to the whole record, because I listen intently at the gym, especially these days, because I'm really fucking getting into working out big time. And
Get ready for Thanksgiving.
I couldn't believe, yeah, that's my cheat day. I could not believe that the whole when it finished, I couldn't believe. I was like, there was not a fucking song on this record that sucked. And that's been the theme this year. Have you noticed that? The Autopsy record, that fucking front to back,
listening to that.
done, dude. I mean, it was killer. There's been, I can't think of one record that came out this year so far. The Cannibal record, front to back. I can't think of any record so far that, in the I guess it's safe to say in the genre we listen to, you know what I mean? For the most part, I can't think of a record that I've heard that didn't. Every song wasn't good. Even the new Prong. Like, remember we talked about the Prong. I
still haven't checked that out.
Yeah, man. I was like, dude, this doesn't. It reminds me of a different Prong, but it was killer. So yeah. I mean, and honestly, in that factor of putting out videos and songs, Judas Priest just released a new song from their record. I think it's coming out. I want to say it's January. Yeah, it's called Trial by Fire. And I was just like, man, just when I think, because I've been watching Ripper do the KK Priest, and Ripper's voice, he's still young. His fucking voice is, I sent you that tune when he did that cover of Abigail Live with the Roadrunner thing, and it was just like,
amazing lungs.
Jesus Christ, my son's like, there's nobody going to hit King Diamond. I said, yeah, hold my beer, listen to this fucker. And he was impressed, and I'm like, Ripper is a different thing, but hearing Rob at 74, 73, I forget how old that he is, dude. And I when I saw it the other day, I was like, this fucking dude. Now, can he hit Painkiller high? No, he can't. We know that. But when I see him live, he's still hitting 75% of those songs, the vocals. And I mean, 70-something years old to still have a voice. How many times?
I'm in my 40s and I'm bitching half the time.
Well,
it's like 70s,
dude, let's be realistic. Just listen to dudes. The dude, Don Dokken, sounds nothing like Don Dokken. Vince Neil, we don't have to go there. Fucking Stephen Pearcy cannot fucking hit those notes. I mean, all these dudes that were in these bands that sang like high, pretty high or had a certain, because hair metal had that type of vocal, the higher register. There's very few dudes, like Tom Kiefer is probably one of the only ones that I've heard.
And he's had a lot of issues.
Dude, he had his vocals. He had his voice completely re fucking built.
Yeah, he had a lot of throat issues.
But if you think of these other dudes, like there was probably only a couple that probably today, like Jamie Lane, Janie, it probably would sound like he did because he just was a freak. But look at Bach, Sebastian.
Jason McMaster sounds.
He cannot. That guy still sounds. But I'm saying Bach can't hit those vocals anymore. When I listen to him, it's
but the cool thing about that is you're right. And with Bach, I guess, and I've heard a few things with him, just interviews the last couple years. he doesn't fake it though. He doesn't put on the tracks. He just does what he
Oh
can
yeah,
do.
yeah,
He
yeah.
goes
No,
out
no.
there and just
And
says, "Fuck
I
it,"
appreciate. Well, we know Vince Neil don't use tracks because
Yeah,
if
no.
anybody should use fucking vocal tracks, it's that dude. But yeah, so the point is that this dude's 70 something years old and he's fucking putting out a record, screaming. And the two songs I've heard off the New Priest, I was like, okay, this might be a fucking ripper. You know what I mean? No pun intended.
Yeah.
It might be a killer record.
Yeah, there's that. Sodom just put out an EP in 1982, which it's got like basically, I think it has like 3 recorded demo tracks that were originally released. They put out a 40 Years of War box set in 2022, and this EP also includes a bonus track, Equinox, that was also available by download only, I guess. But they had put a cassette out on the 40 Years of War box set, so they basically recorded all those again. Some of those demo tracks, and that's available on Steamhammer, I believe. But I saw Sodom in Lithuania at the Kilcum Festival this year, and they were awesome.
They've always
You
been
know,
good, man.
yeah, they were great. I'm trying to. There's another release that I wanted to mention too. Parasite Disciple, uh, the band Parasite Disciple. They put out an EP on morbid subculture, auditory hallucinations, I believe is what it's called. That has Brian Fitzgerald from Dead Flesh, Cystic Dysentery. I can't speak today. Ben Davis from Cystic Dysentery, Zach Lindsay from Cystic Dysentery, and Ex Geist, and Tim Church, who was in Postmortem Possession and Incinerate Creation. But they just put out an EP. They're out of Jacksonville, I believe. You may remember. I've known Ben Davis. I'm sure you remember cystic dysentery.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm stumbling over the words today, but there's that going on. Like I said, we have some guests. There's I'm trying to think if there's anything else before we go here that I did want to mention. Also, there's a book that came out because I'm going to try to get this guy to come on our show. We've done musical work with him on the Doomsla first record, but there's a Vaj Moore, who was the drummer for the Dwarves, the punk band the Dwarves, just put out a book. His second book was actually his third book, I believe, but this one is called My Life After the Dwarves: More Sex, Drugs, Debauchery, and the Devil. That's available, I think, on Amazon. I just ordered a copy today, actually. But I would like to get Vaj on the show. He did, if you remember, Ed, Vaj did all the spoken words on the first Doomsla record that we did. So he just put out that book, which I'm excited to check out. And 1 second here, and I'm gonna tell you guys there's 3 movie releases I want to mention, and then we're gonna get Mr. Ed on here, Mr. Big Ed McKeever.
Big Ed, Little Ed.
Yes, Big Ed McKeever, and yeah, we had two Eds joining, so it's going to be a little confusing. But so Thanksgiving, the movie Thanksgiving, which it came out on November 17th. Eli Roth, Patrick Dempsey, Rick Hoffman. So basically, it's like a movie. I enjoyed it. It's kind of like basically, there's a Black Friday thing going on. So people get killed on Black Friday, stomped to death, and basically this guy goes and starts killing everybody.
Like a
I guess it's kind
pilgrim.
of like a pilgrim, like a revenge thing. There are some scenes in this movie. I mean, it's definitely a fun Thanksgiving slasher film. Pretty gory, but done. It's pretty brutal.
Fits the time frame.
Yeah, it fits the time frame. I don't want to give anything away because it is a new movie. I don't want to give away too much, but there's an oven scene, which I've always thought to myself, actually, like, imagine being tossed in like a conventional oven where you make turkeys at, and there's
waiting for your temperature thing to pop.
Yeah, getting sliced up on the table. But there's some shit in that movie. But definitely Thanksgiving's definitely worth checking out. There was, let me see, There's Something in the Barn, which came out, which is a horror comedy by Magnus Martins, who did 12 Monkeys and Banshee. It was released at the Fantastic Film Festival in September in Austin, Texas. Basically, it's an American family follows their dream after inheriting a cabin in Norway. But obviously, everything goes wrong. Over-the-top deaths, Christmas feel to it. If you like those kind of holiday slasher films, it's worth checking out. There's also It's a Wonderful Life, which came out on November 10th. Which is kind of like a screamish kind of thing. Kind of has that Scream feel to it. It was directed by Tyler McIntyre. Basically, a woman sees her friend murdered, so she starts to blame herself. Killer's on the loose. Kind of that whole another Christmas twist to it. So those are some holiday horror movies if you want to check them out. So yeah, I think Ed's calling us in here now. 1 second here. And we are joined tonight on the Tampa Morgue by Showtown American Pictures. Um, Big Ed, right? Ed McKeever. How you doing, Ed?
Hello. Thanks for having me on tonight, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it, man. And you're a fellow. Anybody who listens to the show knows that me and Ed are both from New Jersey, and you're from New Jersey also.
That's correct. Originally born in Jersey City and then grew up in South Jersey. Like we were discussing earlier, what exit? So I would have been exit 58 on the Parkway.
Exactly.
58. Did you spend much time on? Did you ever go to like the? Say, I'm a Seaside Heights, Tom's River area. Did you spend much time going to the shore growing up over there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a rite of passage growing up in Jersey. You spend every weekend, Keensburg, Seaside. It's just a matter of where you're going to go. Point Pleasant, Lavalette. It really depends on what kind of people you want to hang out with. Every little town has its own little scene.
Wow, you said
Yeah.
Keensburg. I think about the old Keensburg amusement park. That was
You know what's funny? Keensburg, I hadn't been there since I was about 13 years old. And then I took my kids there when I was in my 30s. And I never realized it's not really a boardwalk. It's like somebody came up with the idea of building an amusement park in a
yep,
parking lot. And
yep,
as a kid, I swore I was on a boardwalk. And I went back. I was like, hey, where's the boardwalk? And it's really not. It's kind of
right,
a play area adjacent to where a boardwalk should be, very unmuch like a Seaside Heights.
yep,
Yeah, see, I
exactly.
was Seaside Heights was. I mean, I got to say, it was pretty awesome. Growing up in that town when you're young, I mean, they had so much shit going on there. I mean, I know most of the music I got was from Seaside. I mean, it was just this is before all obviously cell phones or any of this stuff, and it was like the place to be. I mean, especially on the weekends and just working up there and stuff. Atlantic City was cool too, and I mean, yeah, it's I do miss Jersey, but it did change. I went back there probably I think 4 or 5 years ago, and it was totally different than when I was growing up there. But it's what happens. But yeah, man. So you,
It's definitely not the same. It's actually funny. I went to Jersey, like you said, a couple years ago, and I never realized like there's still beautiful parts of New Jersey, especially South Jersey, where it's not as urban, it's more rural. But just driving down some of the highways, you see the disrepair that when you're there daily, you don't see it. And then when you come down here to Florida, things are a little better maintained. You go there and then you're like, wow, I didn't realize like, a lot of this looks like it could be knocked down and rebuilt.
yeah, yeah. And I actually was there probably 3 months before Sandy. So I was in those areas before it got wiped out and stuff. And um, I did, that. I mean, obviously that kicked that area's ass, but they did fix up a lot of it. But it's. I think when you're a kid, you always have different. It's a different perspective, right? When you go to these places, like Seaside looks so big as a kid, like it just looked like the greatest place on earth. And then when you're older, you go there, it's a little different. But
You
yeah.
mean it's
So
not
For
like the
me,
Bon
Seaside's
Jovi?
still like the greatest. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Ed.
No, no, it's good. As I said, it's not like the Bon Jovi video, like when we were growing up.
yeah, I remember when they were shooting
You
that
know,
there.
I was there. No, we talked about that. I was there that day when they
And
were
Ed's
doing the
worked with
boat.
Bon Jovi, big at our guest. We'll get to that eventually too.
Yeah,
But
it's
oh wow,
crazy.
you heard. I guess you did your research on me.
yeah, we did a little bit of we did a little bit
Yeah,
of
a little
research.
bit.
Yeah, and I know you were actually so Ed. So Ed, you make horror films, obviously. You've well, we're going to get to that. And you grew up, so you were introduced to horror what by Alfred Hitchcock movie back in the day, right? On the black and white TV. You're back in like 5 or 6. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a combination of Alfred Hitchcock films and the early morning WPIX, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and Abbott and Costello meet The Invisible Man, and then all the Universal horrors, and of course every Thanksgiving, the loop of King Kong, black and white, back to back to back for 24 hours straight. Just great memories growing up in North Jersey back in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean that's God, and you guys used to your father. What you guys used to go to the multiplexes right back then, which, back in Jersey. When I think back to those times, I remember like they had the Dover Theater off Route 37. They had the drive-ins, and Laurelton Drive-In Theater on Route 88 in Brick. I don't know if half of this stuff is still there anymore. Obviously, Wildwood had some theaters too, but you were going to what a lot of the multiplexes with your dad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love the multiplexes, and even when I didn't go with my dad, the great thing about the multiplex was my dad could drop me off with like $6, and $3 for my ticket and $3 for a soda and a refillable popcorn,
He was
and I
movie
would
hopping
clip
this
out the little
guy.
paperwork. Yeah, for the little newspaper, you clip out the little paperwork that had the show times before computers, and then I would just jump from theater to theater. I got really good at it, evading all the ushers and the manager and everything else, pretending I needed to go use the bathroom so I could go get my refill of popcorn. It was kind of like a movie and like an excursion and adventure all in the same day outing.
Yeah, I remember the movie hopping. That was like a
Thing.
lot of people did it back then, but it
It
was
was a
like kind of like the
thing.
slick thing. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
and so you saw what the original Star Wars trilogy in a drive-in I had read, and that what was that new? And that was East New Brunswick. You were living
Yeah,
in that
East
time
Brunswick. Yeah,
period.
it's funny. I only vaguely remember doing that interview when you bring that up. That's funny, but yeah, there was a matter of fact where the I think the multiplex is on Route 18 in East Brunswick now, if it's still there. I haven't been to Jersey in a couple of years. That's where the drive-in movie theater was. And then I remember I saw it getting torn down as a kid, and then like 6 months later, the first multiplex I'd ever seen was in its place. And every time I went there, I went to go see Crocodile Dundee and all these great '80s films. But in my little brain, my young kid brain couldn't register where the drive-in went.
Was that the
It's
Turnpike
crazy.
Drive-In, or is that still there? That was like the that was the
Turnpike's the other.
popular.
Nah,
Yeah, it's the other
the
way.
only drive-in left in New Jersey now is the Delsey Drive-in down in Vineland. And then what they would occasionally do is on the boardwalk on the beach in Wildwood about 7, 8 summers ago, they would do a pop-up screen and they would show movies on the beach at night. Mostly tourists would go to it, but it wasn't an actual drive, and it was like a specialty pop-up event that they would do. But the only drive-in still in operation there is the Delsey.
Yeah, I forgot
Wow.
about the driving in East Brunswick because my dad and my mom both worked in East Brunswick. They drove. That was back when you drove 45 to 50 minutes an hour to work because the jobs were so good.
Yeah,
I went to a vocational school behind the mall off of in East Brunswick, which is crazy because I lived an hour away. But that just the memories of Jersey, man. That's drive-ins, multiplex. I saw Red Dawn and I came out and was ready. I remember that shit. I
Oh,
remember coming out
yeah.
off of,
I
right off of Route 35. I said, "Come on, motherfucker, let's go." Where are they looking for the parachutes, man? I remember, when you were a kid, come out after Rocky, you're looking to fight somebody, man. It was one of those, you know, not anymore.
Yeah, it's a little before my time, but that's like the Warriors. They say they had to
Yep,
stop playing the
Oh
Warriors
yeah.
back in the late '70s because kids were like leaving the theater and huge fights were erupting and kids were just getting their asses kicked. I
guys
remember hearing
walking
about
around
that.
with bottles on their fingers.
And Fight Club was the
Yeah,
same
Warriors,
thing, I think.
not to play.
yeah, that's a cult classic. It's weird because my kid's 21 now, but shit, I don't know. Probably played when he was like 13 or 14. He was like, this is gonna suck because it was old. Like didn't look new compared to new movies
Yeah,
that have all the CGI. But when it was over, he was like, that's probably one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I was like, yep. Because if you grew up
yeah,
there, if you've ever been to New York, Coney Island, anywhere, anywhere in the city, um, that's how it was. It was fucking nuts. Like they kind of really made it look authentic for back
yeah. I
then.
remember when I was a kid, you would go into New York City, and it wasn't like New York City now where you're looking at Disney and big Coca-Cola signs. I mean,
Triple
yeah, there was
X
a Coca-Cola
theaters.
sign there. Yeah, but when you went there, it was triple X theaters, it was prostitutes, it was, shady people trying to sell you fireworks out of like holes in the ground that went underneath
Oh
their
yeah,
storefronts and stuff. And the crazy thing was my parents would actually let me and my uncle, who was only a couple years older than me, like go to Manhattan for the day and didn't wonder what happened to us when I was like 9 and 10 years old.
yeah,
Stuff
that's
I would
nuts.
never let my kids do today. It's insane.
It was a
Well, I think
different.
about going to the original Yankee Stadium, and on TV you see it, and you're like, "Oh my god!" And then when you walk around where it was a fucking cesspool, but it was iconic.
It
You know what I
was.
mean? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. If you never went to the original Yankee Stadium, you ain't fucking lived. That's for sure. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's like
When you talk
you're
about baseball stadiums, that's like falling asleep on the subway and waking up by Shea Stadium. That's not something you want to do either.
yeah,
exactly
exactly.
exactly
Oh fuck.
the good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, but that was back actually when I remember my parents used to give me like $3 to go get them cigarettes, and nobody cared. Like I would take my bike
Yeah.
up and buy my parents cigarettes at 7-Eleven, and no one said a word to you. It was like
Never.
now.
Right.
And it wasn't even like you see played in the movies where somebody had like a note written. No, nobody thought anything. It was like, hey,
Yeah.
kid, you want cough syrup? You want a fifth of something? You want, oh, it's for your dad? Sure. Here you go. It all went in the paper bag. And if you had the cash, you were on your way.
You'd
Yeah,
have Randall from Clerks handing you a pack. Remember when he handed the baby a pack
the
of
kid a pack of
cigarettes?
cigarettes. Yeah, that was great. So was that around eight? I'm figuring around 81, right? What were some of the movies? So I know you're a big Phantasm fan. What that was like? What 79, the first one. Back in
Yeah.
that time
Yeah.
period,
But
you
I
had
caught
like.
it on television late night, early 80s, probably like around 82, 83, somewhere in that area.
Were you into like any of the like? We actually have Count Gore coming on here. We. I was really big into the TV horror hosts, which I know Svengooly's still out there and stuff. And when you were growing up, did you watch any of those guys like Zachary? Um,
Yes.
yeah, they were
Yeah,
great.
was it Zachary was the New York,
New
so you
York,
would see him, but I never
Philadelphia.
really saw him live. It was always like a pre-recorded thing. They would put him on like the news and stuff. I think the live components were a little before my time, but I would catch Dr. Shock when you would go to like the UHF channels on your
Oh yeah,
TV, and
Yep.
I would get Dr. Shock out of Philadelphia.
Wow.
yeah, Doctor Shock. Yeah, that's
Forgot
it.
about Dr. Shock.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
Some of them are still. Some
yeah.
of those guys are still going. I mean, like I said, Svengooly's been going for years. Count Gore's got that guy's been going since the
Was
'70s.
it
It's
Count Gore Duvall? Is that how you say it?
yeah, he's coming on our show
Yeah,
actually in 2 weeks. So he'd actually,
that's awesome.
yeah, he's the first. It's kind of cool. He's the first horror host to actually do a weekly show on the internet. Like he has a YouTube show weekly, and his whole get up and everything. He's still rolling though, still doing the conventions. So did you go to a lot of the conventions when you were growing up? Because what was up in Monster? You had up in Jersey and
Chiller
Philly.
Theater.
Yeah, Chiller Theater, Cherry Hill,
Yeah,
right?
Chiller
And
Theater was
Very home.
one of the first ones. And as a kid, I didn't know those things existed. I would have went to them like crazy back in the 90s and early 2000s. I really didn't discover the conventions until like 2002, 2003. And I went to it and I was just like, wow, this is crazy. Because a lot of the people that were appearing were on the shows that I remember watching, not simulcast, but when they show them back in reruns. And it was like, the Munsters were there and people from the Addams family were there and all the old robot shows from the 60s. And that's all the stuff I remember watching as a kid on the black and white tube.
Florida has some good ones. That Spooky Empire, I've been to that a bunch of years. That's really big. I know there's like 3 now in Florida of the horror movie conventions. But have you been to Spooky yet?
I've been to Spooky Empire. Matter of fact, we did pretty sure it was Spooky Empire. We did a panel there, the trailer of The Beast Comes at Midnight before we'd release the film. And we actually premiered it there. And that was pretty cool. We had a good turnout. Like 100 people came out and we're sitting in the seats. And, it was a really cool event. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Spooky's gotten big. I remember going there when it was only a few tables, and now it's like gigantic. I mean, it's such a big event now. I know Petey's been doing that for years, but it's he has musicians, got guys from Kiss going in there now. He'll have, it's like I think it's like probably like 20% musicians, and then the rest horror movie, and then sci-fi and stuff like that. But it's definitely a killer convention. So yeah, so when you were seeing Phantasm about that time, what you had Sleepy Camp. You had what was it? Sleepaway Camp, My Bloody Valentine was out. The Friday the 13th. Were these movies that were influencing you young?
Yeah,
Halloween.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess the genre that's like camping horror. And for a while there in the early 80s, everything was kind of an homage, or better term, ripoff of Friday the 13th. Everybody thought they were going to cash in. So you had The Burning, you had
Yeah,
Sleepaway Camp, and then you had a lot of films that were in that flavor, like the really in your face slashers. And that's where you got the stuff like The Prowler, which is also filmed in New Jersey.
Prowler. Yeah,
If you ask me, that whole camping thing really spurs from like New Jersey and New York. It seems like that's where all those movies were filmed back in that period of time.
yeah. Because Friday the 13th. That was some of that was Connecticut, right? And then some of that was Jersey, I believe. I believe some of the.
The sequel was Connecticut, but the original was up in Camp Novi Bosco, which is
Yes,
North Bergen Boy Scouts.
that's
And
right.
the whole town up there. Matter of fact, every Friday the 13th, they do like a huge thing there from the diner and the theater, and like the whole town becomes a Friday the 13th event, which is really cool.
I say that is really
That
cool.
would
I
be
think that's
killer.
always it's always neat when they do that. I saw they were doing in California where they shot the Lost Boys, which I mean I love the Lost Boys. they actually have we were talking about the drive-in. They actually set up on the beach there, and then I guess once a year they have like a Lost Boys thing where everybody goes and watches by that boardwalk where they shot the film at. They go watch the movie on the beach and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. That was, I don't know. Lost Boys is one of those movies that it never gets old. We're talking, Ed, about like my sister's kids, which just saw Goonies, and they were a big Goonie fan. I was like, how do you not like Goonies? And I'm like, maybe it's just they're so used to like all the CGI now and all this stuff. Maybe it just looks outdated to them, I mean,
Yeah, it makes sense. I also think kids are a lot more mature than we were as teenagers or young adults, back in like the 80s or even 90s. Kids today are like, they're so ingrained in the technology and everything. Like you said, the CGI, seeing a pirate ship going across the water in a cave isn't really exciting to them anymore because they see that in 1,000 YouTube videos.
Right.
yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
original Freddy, I'll never forget, when the scene where he's coming through the alley and his arms are like 20 feet wide and he's scraping them on the fucking thing. And as a kid, that fucked you up. Here, and we're going to see, what the hell is that? The newest Exorcist movie. And I'm sitting there just going, mm, like the original Exorcist to me, that was the shit because it was new. They didn't fucking have it. You never saw that kind of shit. The pea soup, all that stuff was like, oh my God. Now they've kind of worn it out. You know what I mean? It's like, how many more
Yeah,
ways can you do the Exorcist type of shit?
yeah, yeah. Well, I
We
think where
grew
it
up in a
hit me
perfect
as a
time.
kid, yeah, well, I think where it hit me as a kid is I grew up Catholic, and nobody would talk about those things.
Right.
So when you watch it, nobody's like the devil. The second you said the word the devil, everybody got quiet, and every old woman in the room, she's doing the cross, and
Mm-hmm.
so all of a sudden you watch this movie where like the devil invades a little girl, and because nobody talks about it, you're like, oh shit, I'm going to get possessed by the devil tomorrow, and I'm going to do
Right.
all these horrible things because no one
You
will
didn't know.
talk about it with you.
And that's why
Right.
people think I always hear people say like to them the Exorcist is the most scary movie, and to me it's. I mean, it's good. I love The Exorcist, but to me, it's not the most scary movie. But I think that's the whole religious aspect. It takes them into a place where they just don't feel comfortable. Which there are some scenes in there which I get. If you're religious, there's some scenes that kind of are pretty,
Well, the
are
evil
pretty
aspect
extreme.
of it
Yeah,
was what the thing was. But to me, like a movie, if you want to talk about an evil movie that like fucked you up, was like The Prince of Darkness. All those
yeah.
scenes where where it kept showing that fucking silhouette that everybody was seeing, and and nobody knew what that meant until the end, and then you were like, "Holy shit," you know.
The
Or
Salem's
Surfing in
Lot
the
got
Rainbow,
me.
same thing.
When that
You
kid was
know,
floating by the window at Salem's Lot, I remember I was really young and I saw that. I never forgot that scene. I don't know what it was. I was like, because you always had that some reason that scene. But also, Ed, so what Fangoria Radio you were into probably back then too. I remember that only ran a few years though, right? But that was always cool back then. That was
I love the Fangora radio show. I used to listen. I was one of the first people that had like that Sirius satellite radio, and that would come on like every Friday night, and that was awesome. I loved it. I think it was like Dee Snyder and Debbie
Debbie
Rochon
Rochon.
and
Yep.
people from the
yep.
magazine. I think that was a really expertly crafted show. I don't know why it ever went off.
Yeah, I think it only was like 3 years, 2 or 4 years that only lasted, which is crazy.
People
Um,
probably wanted to
Yeah.
get paid big bucks. Dee Schneider wanted that big
yeah,
paycheck.
probably. But I
Yeah,
think
well, I think the magazine also went through some changes at that time too. I know they like changed editors, and then somebody bought it, and then, so I'm sure a lot of that factored into it as well. I was
and that
always hoping it
magazine
would come
started
back.
in
That was my
70.
Friday nights driving home from work.
Yeah. And that magazine was like 79 that started. That thing's been around was a long time. So yeah, so you're into horror movies, but before that you do, which I thought was really interesting actually, and I'm sure you get asked a lot about this. So Ed did you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, Ed, you did 25 years, right, of executive and venue security in Atlantic City
That is correct.
for
Now I have to talk
concerts.
differently and I have to act differently because that's a whole different world. That's the world where you have to really be cognizant of every word that you say and what you do. Because I was the guy who was responsible for who got backstage, what they did backstage, what they saw backstage, what they didn't see backstage. And I did that for a long time.
So I know, and I'm sure I know Ed can't tell us just probably many stories you cannot tell us. But when I saw when I saw that you were part of the security, my dad did some of this work too back in the day. I know you must have seen some shit, man. Like, because you did. I mean, you figure you did concerts. You did wrestling events. Like you were working with like
That
the
is correct.
biggest of big, right? Like, can you tell me your experience with Brian Adams by any chance?
Oh wow, you did do your research. Oh man, Brian Adams. Yeah, I was a huge fan of Brian Adams. I'm not gonna lie. Like I really was a huge fan of
I
Brian
was
Adams.
is the key
I
point, Ed. Remember this, Webb.
I loved his music. I think I had like all of his cassettes. I think I might even had a Brian Adams poster. And the crazy thing was, so we do him in a concert in Atlantic City. And this is one of those times I wasn't doing executive protection. I was running security at a venue, one of the former Trump venues in Atlantic City. And there's certain rules and regulations to a concert for safety and everything else. You have to make sure the aisles are clear. You have to make sure people are in their seats. They can dance, but they have to dance in the area that they purchased of their seat. And this is because of fire control issues and ingress and egress and all these important things for safety. And, a Brian Adams concert happens, and you have people that haven't been to a concert in 30 years, and they start drinking, and they don't want to be contained to the little area of their seat. And I get it. I get it. You want everybody to have a good time, but you also have to do it in a safe manner. So we're instructed by the fire marshal to keep the aisles clear. So me and my team of guys are walking through the aisles, very nicely asking people, please head to your seats, folks. Please clear the aisle, for safety issues, yada yada yada. Brian Adams called us out, and quite truthfully, the way he treated the staff, he was a douchebag. I could really care less about Brian Adams. Now he has to remember that we were fans too. We were just there in a job function to ensure safety, and I listened to. Matter of fact, and I don't do this often, I took my Brian Adams CD that was in my car and I wung that bad boy out on the parkway, rotting somewhere out in the woods near like exit 58. You're going to find my Brian Adams greatest hits.
Wow.
Yeah, he doesn't play rock music anymore anyway.
No.
Brian Adams.
I got to tell you, that story right there cuts like a knife. I'm sure you're gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom, boom. Where's your little?
Well,
Where's your little?
Well, Ed met you met some cool guys too, right? Some people that you wouldn't expect that were pretty nice. And we're definitely going to get to your movies and stuff, but I have to touch on the security thing for a few minutes because it's really interested me.
Sure.
So Elton
It
John, you
makes me
said, was a cool
interesting,
guy.
actually.
Yeah, you said Elton
Who,
John
I'm
was
sorry?
Elton John was a cool guy.
Elton John was a super cool guy. I actually spent a few birthdays with Elton John. Elton John seemed to come around Atlantic City. I'm a July baby. And Elton always seemed to come around, and he always played on a weekend that was either my birthday, the day before, or the day after. And this happened a couple years in a row. So somebody related to Elton John that I had spent like 3 birthdays with him. So he went out of his way to give me a hug and was very cordial and, gave me a little happy birthday greeting song, and very, very sweet guy, very nice. I have no bad thing. I really don't have anything bad to say about anybody in the industry other than maybe than Daryl Hall and
I was about
and
to
and
ask you
and
about that.
and Brian Adams. Everybody else was really cool.
But John Hall was no problem, right? I had heard you say that was John Hall was
What's
okay.
that?
John Hall was okay, right?
Well,
It was Daryl.
yeah. Hall Oates is a great guy. Daryl Hall, different story.
Yeah, and
So like you'll
Springsteen.
notice one of the things that I always write, somebody will be talking about Hall and Oates, and I don't really like to publicly out people as being an asshole. So like I'll often write, Oates is a great guy. And it's funny because I actually heard an interview one time from Rick Springfield, and that's a guy I've done in concert like 50 times. He always played the casinos in Atlantic City. That was his place. And one time he was doing an interview on the 80 station on Sirius. And like he's talking about, he's like, oh, yeah, that last song that was Hall and Oates, they won. And he actually goes, yeah, I really like, is it John Oates? John Oates. I really like John Oates. And the way he said it, I was like, oh, that's exactly the same thing I do. Like, you can't say anything nice about Daryl Hall, but you have to go out of your way to say something nice about John Oates.
And Springsteen was okay.
Springsteen's a great dude.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. We're probably on different ends of the spectrum politically, he and I. But it's any of the time that I ever spent around him, whether it was doing security, and I've done security at private events with Springsteen and bars and everything else. Matter of fact, one really cool memory I have is this is before I was in the world of doing like executive protection and venue security. I was like 16 years old, and my uncle was head bouncer at a place called the Playpen Lounge in Sayreville. And it was like a Wednesday night, and there wasn't many people in the place. And that was kind of the happening place. People like, who's the guy from Natural Born Killers?
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson. People like Woody Harrelson would like just drop in there. Like you just get the most random people at the Playpen Lounge. It was an art stock club, and art stock was like this famous promoter back in the day. And we're there one night, and the manager comes in, and he goes, "That's it. How many people we got in the bar?" And we're like, "I don't know, like 16 people, according to the how many people paid the admission coming in." the cover. And he goes, we're closing up. We're like, why? We're going to Asbury. And there was Springsteen. We show up at Asbury, 15 people in the club watching Springsteen play on stage with the house band. I mean, it was really, I mean, some like, garage band that was up there for the night. So seeing that at 16 years old, I think that shaped my life.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And how was it hard to see, like, because I'm sure you see it. We're not going to, we won't ask you for any names, but when you see these people treat, like, you've probably seen a lot of big artists treat people like shit. Like, because I've seen it just from, I used to work at venues, I used to book shows, and I've seen it on even smaller levels. Was that hard? I mean, it's your job though, right? There's nothing you could do. You got to stand there and just basically, your job is to protect the celebrity from whatever you have to. Was it hard to see that though, as just a regular dude?
I mean, it's really interesting. You see people in all phases of business and everything. And you have the people, they run their piece of business, they segment it like anyone else does. We would see the same thing in the person that the management that runs a venue, how it trickles down from the person who's the general manager, the booker, down to the person who takes the tickets, to the person who washes the seats, to the person who does the valet parking. And, you have your whole thing. And it's the same thing backstage in the concert industry. You have the artist, you have the artist's personal entourage, you have the security detail. So a lot of the time, you won't necessarily see the artist belittling someone, but you will see the artist belittling their own staff, and then shit rolls downhill. So
Yeah.
then that person will make it their life's mission to make whoever it is, and especially if it's local house staff, the people that work for the venue itself, that's collateral damage. Those people don't matter at all. They don't factor in their lives. So if they just don't like the way they look, smell, or act, even momentarily for 1 second, they're gone. They want them fired. They want them out of there. I always had a hard time with that because my feeling is when you have these big mega venues, the reason they were created, a lot of the time they're subsidized by the state. The state pays to build the venue. A promoter comes in, they book the shows there. So the reason it was put there, it's put there for two reasons. One, to expand the financial opportunities from all the businesses surrounding that venue and the workforce of people that are now supposed to get fair, decent living wage jobs working at that venue, especially in the off-season months when you have beach towns and such. What they really, a lot of the time, turn into is these big mechanisms that want to make money, although you're never really going to make money with venues like that because the heating, the electric, the taxes, everything else is so astronomical. And then the only way that they can offset that is by offering people minimum wage jobs to fill them. And then being surprised when you have people that have minimum wage jobs can't operate a venue of that magnitude to the quality standards that they see fit.
Yeah, see, that's like you said, it all rolls downhill. It starts from
Yep.
there. I mean, it's
Shit
all
rolls downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and before obviously we're gonna get to your movies too. But what was you don't have to. So what was? So I know you're pretty musically diverse, right? I know you grew up on like what this WCBS 101 and stuff like that. But you also obviously we're a metal show pretty much under metal and punk and all these things. But we love rock, all these things. So what was to you? What's one of the coolest bands you saw play live that you actually yeah, I guess personally, what was one of the coolest bands you saw play live, and what is one of the worst bands you saw play live?
Wow.
Well, I guess the cool thing is, since I started doing the security thing, well, I did the club stuff when I was a kid, but then when I started doing like the venue security and stuff like that, it was during the 90s. So a lot of the bands that I actually grew up and liked wound up playing. And I would actually see these old doo-wop bands, but they were no longer the headline acts. They'd be opening for other bands. So I got to see the Everly Brothers open for Simon and Garfunkel. And I'm a huge Everly Brothers fan. I know that's my father's generation of music, but that's what I really grew up into. And the funny thing was, people are buying their beers, people are going out for a smoke, people are doing everything but watching the Everly Brothers. And when they were done with their set, about a half hour before Simon and Garfunkel come on, I get to walk the Everly Brothers out to their car, and they're getting into like a rental vehicle. And it was just interesting to see because, these are guys who probably toured the world one time back in the 60s and 70s, and they were like a major act themselves. And now they were all kind of relegated to these spots where they were the opening act for other bands. Didn't make them any less impressive to me. I was still a huge fan. I got to see like Sha-Na Na. I got to see not Bill Haley because Bill Haley was dead, but I got to see Bill Haley's Comets. Rock Around the Clock and all that stuff. And these guys were like well into their 80s at the time, but they were still rocking out with the guitars and the horns and the drums. And
And you
just
had a
that it
great
did.
James Brown
That's kind of what I'm
experience.
into. I'm sorry.
You had a great James Brown experience too.
Oh, James Brown's awesome. So James Brown, he plays a Fourth of July event in Atlantic City. Me and my partner Big Kev were there, and he walks out, and James Brown's walking out of the backstage. It was funny because it wasn't like a normally booked event. It wasn't like a Live Nation or a Clear Channel event. It was booked by like a casino on a one-off, where it was a night that he wasn't doing something else, and they booked him for like this fundraiser thing. It was very lightly attended. It was James Brown, I think Patti LaBelle. James Brown comes out very minimal, doesn't have a lot of entourage. It's just him, a limo, like one or two handlers. He walks out and he sees my guy Kev. Now I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'3", 330, 340, what have you. And my buddy Kev's 6'6", 350, 360. He's a big dude too. And James Brown was walking out. When the Godfather of Soul walks out, you see the Godfather of Soul walking out. You stand, yes, sir, Mr. Brown, right this way. And he sees my guy Kev. Now Kev is one of the biggest, scariest human beings you've ever seen in your entire life, but like a gentle soul, man, just so cool. He walks out and he sees Kevin looking, and he goes, "Hey, my brother," and he gives Kevin a hug. And then he looks over, he looks past, and he sees that I'm just there watching, and he's like, and Kevin's a black guy, so it was my black brother, but it was very cool. And I'm just standing there, and then he turns, he goes, "My white brother," and he gives me a hug. And next thing you know, I'm hugging James Brown, man. It's like midnight, in Atlantic City, and we're standing on a loading dock out behind Atlantic City. I got the Godfather of Soul hugging me. He opens up his limousine door, he looks in, just like you would expect, it's just so cool. Opens up the door, and he goes, "You boys gotta come with me to me about ladies." And he talks just like that. Like that's exactly how he talks. Like it wasn't an affect, it wasn't acting. He was James Brown. That's the way he was. He opens it up, and there were these like five ladies in the limousine. Tell me about ladies. And Kevin and I to this day, when we speak, we're like, hey, maybe we should have just taken the ride with James Brown, man, and just like disappeared into the sunset. That would have been a good time to do it, because I don't know if it really gets any better than that. The Godfather of Souls, like offering for you to, who knows what adventures would have happened?
Well, and you're always going to regret that a little bit. That's always going to be the
Yep.
one thing on the back of your
Yeah.
brain. You'll be in your deathbed, and they're going to be like, you'd be like, James Brown, what would have been? What could have happened?
Yeah.
James Brown's going to meet you at the pearly gates going, "You don't know what you missed, boys."
Yeah, exactly.
You have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And one last question about this before we move on. Who was the most debaucherous band you've dealt with at all? I mean, you had to see some shit, man. Because I don't even know your roster who you dealt with, but I'm figuring 25 years, Atlantic City, Jersey, tri-state area. You've seen some shit. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with the Ozzy Osbournes and the,
Some of these things I really don't even want to talk about, because some of them they probably still have pending like
we
civil
won't tell
litigation in some
Yeah,
respects. Like I did a lot of stuff at different concerts where you would hear all of a sudden reading the paper, and they'd be like, and it's such and such a show on such and such a date, such and such an artist did this. And it's like, wow, people under my I was directly supervising were around when these things may have occurred. And there was like, and I don't want to misstate it either. I don't want to say, yeah, I was definitely there for there. I wasn't there for that. But I do remember one time Marilyn Manson was performing at the Arts Center. And I remember one of my guys went down, and he comes down to the office like, dude, you want to, he's like, it was crazy. It was like, Marilyn Manson was up there exposing himself or telling some kid, show me his pubes, or it's just some crazy stuff. Right. And I'm like, what the hell, And then I'm not sure if that was the circumstance or a very similar circumstance. He wound up going to court for something about that very shortly after. So I don't know if it was that experience or if it was just maybe that was a normal thing that he did. But I know we had an irate father that wanted to kick Marilyn Manson's ass. And, my guys had to calm the whole family down because Marilyn Manson, I'm very careful what I say. I don't know Marilyn Manson, but
he's been in court a lot lately.
Stay away from little kids and stuff. Don't make ridiculous comments to little kids. But their fathers are there, their parents are there. I can understand. One time I had David Lee Roth. All right, so David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar were both in Van Halen.
Yes.
Yeah. They performed for a while together, and we were pretty much told backstage. This is one of the Trump properties we did their concert. It was they would alternate back and forth. One would open the show one night, one would close the show one night, and vice versa. They had to have dressing rooms on different ends of the hallway because if they were near each other, their guys would start fighting like the Sharks and Jets. So we'd have to physically, my guys would have to physically keep everyone separated. We have to make sure nobody from Sammy's camp would come over and mess with anybody from David Lee Roth's camp. And ridiculous, kind of like all the stuff I would deal with backstage with the Eagles. That's a whole other story. So you would deal with this. And it did happen. One guy starts mouthing off to another guy. One guy's walking down the hallway. Other guy's big, bad, better than the other one. They're both walking down the hallway. Me and my guys have to separate everybody, get everybody back like little kids, get them back where they're going. And so David Lee Roth is like his handlers before that advanced the show with us are like, listen, it's not like Sammy's show. He's not going to come off stage. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. He's just going to go up there. He's going to do his 60 or 90 minutes, whatever it is. He's going to interact with the crowd. No one's going to come up on stage, and that's it. But there is one part of the show where he throws some beer in the audience, and his eyesight's not so great. So we want your guy to turn around at that time from the barricade, the guy that's in the stage area, and just turn around and wipe down the stage so he doesn't slip because it's going to be wet there. And I didn't see it. But my guy came freaking out. He tried to rip, I guess, David Lee Roth off the stage, turned into a whole big thing, a whole big to-do. But you'll find out in the world of rock and roll, which you guys are well aware of, sometimes 5 minutes later, everybody just wants to forget about it because they don't want it to become a thing.
Yeah.
The way it was related to me, he put the beer bottle between his legs and I guess made a suggestive move towards my guy's face with the beer bottle, and he didn't like it because of the way it may have looked to the crowd. This changes your opinion of people historically when things like this happen.
Did you guys deal with that a lot? Because I've seen at shows where the security guard is like standing there facing the crowd and the artist is kind of like fucking their head or like joking around and just kind of being like taunting them a little bit. Is that a common thing you guys would deal with? Even in your experience?
Yeah, not me so much because I was always more in a supervisory capacity. I'd be moving from one area to another and such. But my guys, I always had the same guys that would work every week in certain areas. And, your guys that are 6'5", 350 pounds, mostly bald-headed guys. These guys love being in the barricade. They shave their head. They got their towel in their head. They're doing their thing. And these are the guys that would have different. Sorry, I'm actually house sitting for someone right now, and they have big wild dogs.
Oh, no,
but
okay. You're welcome.
Artists would love to walk over and rub their heads, spill water on top of their heads, maybe occasionally hit them with something. Some artists, I'm not going to go into names right now because it'll just open up old wounds, but I've actually had artists that have gone out of their way, maybe even violent or something, actually smack guards from behind. They're not happy with the crowd, or they have some, for lack of a better term, stick up their ass. And these are volatile situations that I would have to get involved in right away. Have to immediately go to the tour management, get everything worked out. And a lot of the time, you kind of want the situation to go away, so you remove that person from the equation. Well, obviously, you're not going to remove the artist who people just spent, in some cases, $1 million in collective ticket sales for them to be performing up on the stage.
Yeah, I was just reading a story actually today. I think it was that they were saying it was a Guns N' Roses story. Believe it or not, I was reading some magazine and they said that when Axl Rose would when he would come through the tunnel, that everyone would freeze in fear around him. Like there would be people playing like ping pong and all these things, and but when he would come, it was like that was it. Everyone was just like, you didn't want to look at him in the eyes. I think I heard the same thing about Prince back in the day. Like you just didn't stare at these dudes when they came through. Such a weird thing to me to hear that, and it's disappointing.
There's a specific. Oh, I'm sorry, to cut you off. There's a specific thing that they would go over with certain artists, and I'll give you a couple of them. I got nothing to hide. If you were ever doing a Diana Ross show, she doesn't like to be looked at. So now you don't know if that's true or not because you don't talk to Diana Ross. You talk to the 5 layers of people that work for Diana Ross.
Her handlers,
and they say, do not look at her. When she comes into the backstage, which you'll know because you'll see our guy coming down the hallway, see our guy turn and face the wall. And I would immediately say, my staff are not going to turn and face a wall. 1, they're ineffective at doing their job if they do so. 2, it's just inhumane. I'm not going to have my staff turn and face a wall to not look at someone. If that's the case, I will remove them from the equation. I will move them to an area. We will sweep the area to make sure that area is secure, and then we're not going to let anyone else in that area. It'll be sterile. And we had a few artists like that. We had Neil Diamond didn't want people around him. Diana Ross didn't want people around her. For safety reasons, when we would do the Rolling Stones, I guess there were some serious situations with Mick Jagger through the years where people had threatened him, and I didn't hear this from his tour management. I think there was a biker bang gang was going to kill him at one time or something. So whenever he comes into backstage, everything freezes immediately, but not because you're told you have to freeze. I think it's because they didn't want any immediate or any distractions. And then he would just calmly get out of his limo and do his thing. Well, back when I smoked, we're at Giant Stadium, the old Giant Stadium, and we're outside smoking. Me and my buddy, I won't drop his name, he's a cop now, but he used to work with me. And we were outside, we're smoking, and we were told when Mick Jagger's limo pulls up, everybody just kind of freezes, just kind of do your thing. So all right, so we freeze, but we're frozen like this with like cigarette just about the tip of our mouth. And you're like, well, do you cup your cigarette and hide it from Mick Jagger? Do you just kind of maybe puff it and maybe just discreetly drop it on the ground and throw it out? Well, we don't really have that position because the way Mick Jagger pulls up in his limousine, and we're not even 100% sure it's him, the window slowly rolls down. And when the window slowly rolls down, there's a video camera on us. And we're just standing there, and it's Mick Jagger. And I guess he's documenting everything as he's pulling into this venue for whatever reason it may be. So I'm on a Mick Jagger home movie. So Mick Jagger gets out, slowly slinks out of the car, starts moving down the hallway. And my buddy looks at me and goes, hey, dude, I think we're on Mick Jagger's home movie. Mick Jagger comes back real fast, stops like right in our face, and he goes, you are. It was just like the most crazy and wild thing because like you have this guy who's like, and I'd been around Mick Jagger a few times. It wasn't the first time I had done the show. It was the first time I've had an interaction like that. And it was very, very just wild and unusual. Here's Mick Jagger, like right in my face, telling me, you're on my own movie. He didn't say it like that. He goes, you are, you know? And it was just, it's one of those moments that like I can relive it in my head 1,000 times over because it was just so surreal, I guess is the best way to say it.
And these guys probably remembered you after a while. Like, I know when I was doing press for this magazine back in the day, I would see the same artist like 4 or 5 times. And eventually there is kind of, they know who you are and there's kind of like a mutual respect there. So I'm sure you eventually, after 25 years, you got into that world too. Yeah, because I mean, like I said, Atlantic City, I could just imagine like this, I know you did wrestling, which is that how you got, so we're going to get into your movies now. So first of all, you got tired after 25 years, right? You just said, fuck it. I need to make a change. I want to make films. That's a pretty ballsy move. Cause I was saying to Ed, if I walked out to the living room and told my wife, you know what, honey, I think I'm going to start making films. Like she'd be like, that's cool. But like, I don't know if she would be like, how did you get away with this? Like, were you married at this time or what was your...
My wife definitely thought it was a crazy thing. And it wasn't quite 25 years. I started doing it was like 18, 19 while I was in college. And well, yeah, I guess I did do it 25 years. It was when I turned 40, though. And I've been doing it about 20 years, is when I told my wife, I was like, I can't see myself doing this at 60, 70. Like, I'm going to tell you, working a Poison show when you're in your 20s is possibly, especially when like, it may be an end of the tour type of thing. The bus
So
is
you're
going to be around
40.
until
So
5
what year is
o'clock in the
that?
morning.
What's that, 20?
Oh,
That's probably what, 87, 88?
well, this wouldn't be for me in the 80s. This would be, at this point they were probably in their 30s at this point, and I was in my
Okay.
20s because they're like a decade ahead of me.
Yeah.
But and they were kind of like on a revival portion. I was still in high school when they were at the peak of their fame. But the people that come to their shows that have this fervent love for them, that doesn't change. So now instead of it being 19, 20-year-old girls, it was just 30-year-old girls. So when you work a Poison show, you're just surrounded by beautiful women wanting to get backstage. And, you're a guy in your 20s, you're hanging out with the band. They're offering for you to hang out with them. That's cool. That's really cool. When you're in your 30s, it's still kind of cool, but now you got a family of your own. You don't really want to get caught up in it. So you're happy to see them, but you don't want to make it a lifestyle. When you're in your 40s, you're like, oh, shit, man, I got to do Poison tonight. I'll be sitting out behind the Wildwood Convention Center until like 7 o'clock in the morning.
You want to go
And
home.
so yeah, I just want to go home. Like, I just want to stop at Wawa and get a sub and just just forget my life, once I got to that point in my life when it was no longer fun to do a Poison show, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying those guys are my best friends or anything, but like being around them, I got to meet people from that tour and even band members. One night we were hanging out with CC DeVille and just cool stuff. But when it was no longer fun to do that, that's when I went to my wife and said, "Hon, I can't keep doing this.
And how was the
This has
pay?
run its
Is
course."
is it good money? Like when you're doing that security, because you were like running what was the boardwalk in Atlantic City? You were doing what, the boardwalk? I forget the title that you had. That was you were running the whole. You were pretty much running the show for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, I was at the height of my career, and I don't know anyone else could ever say this. I was the director of event security for the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. I was the director of event security for the Atlantic City Convention Center. This is all at the same time. I handled all of the event security for the Wildwood Convention Center. I handled all three properties in Atlantic City for event security for the Trump properties, the Trump Plaza, the Trump Taj Mahal, and the Trump Marina. Um, I did all of the convention shows and ancillary things that they did for Bally's and Caesars. I did a lot of the events for Tropicana. I did exclusively all of the concert shows and sporting events, including the fights, MMA fights, and everything over at the Borgata Hotel and Casino.
Wow.
And I was brought in to run all of the event security at the what's now the Ocean, but at the time it was the Revel, when it was the most expensive casino ever built for like $2.2 billion. And not to mention that, but whenever an event came into town, concert show, sporting event, when they wanted to have Jimmy Buffett on the beach and 100,000 people, they would tell the promoters, "You have to hire Ed and his team to run security for this." And I don't want to say that it wasn't a dictate of any kind. It was just that they knew that they would get the level of service and safety that they were expecting. So it got a lot easier to get a permit to do events in Atlantic City once me and my partner's names were named with it, because they knew that it was going to get the proper care and everything that it needed to be a successful and smooth running event.
Wow, so you
That's
must have been
awesome.
making some cash, and to leave that, I got to give you credit, man. That's pretty, that's a risky thing, right? I mean, and so what you went, so when you first started, you decided you want to make films, right? You decided you had some cash to do this. So did you go right to Craigslist, which I think everybody listening to the show knows what Craigslist is, because I think it's available in like shitloads of countries now, like But I mean, so you went, is that your first? You went to Craigslist to look for into like filmmakers and college students?
I did. I did. I had a little bit of experience. I did some extra work, and also I did security for some movies. I supplied security for the movie Warrior, The Bounty Hunter with Jennifer Aniston, just anything that came through the Atlantic City or South Jersey area. My name would get dropped in the hat to be contacted to handle the security. And then from that, I would do some extra work. And I got to work on the movie Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage. You could see me for about 2 seconds in the film, and a few of these other films through the years. And then I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with all
You
that.
had some soprano ties, didn't you? Weren't you like were you were in like a couple different scenes for the Sopranos when you were doing security or something? Was that, is that
Yeah,
true?
well, I actually I did security for a lot of their private autograph signings at different casinos. Because what they would do is they would have these high roller events, and the high rollers would want to meet the Sopranos. The Sopranos were like the hottest thing in the early to mid 2000s. So the casinos, I won't drop the name of the casino, they would bring them in, and they would bring their what they call their whale players in. These are the people that could potentially lose like $1 million on the cards for the weekend, and they would get them a meet and greet. And it was a quick grip and grin. They would come in, they would do a quick autograph, and then they would do like a group photo. And it was a concession, a conveyor belt. You just keep everybody moving. And then they filmed some scenes for The Sopranos in Atlantic City at the Borgata. And I was offered to come aboard as a extra. So yeah, I got to be on set, both supplying security for their filming and also doing extra work on the show.
And you had went to school. You went to Brooksdale, right? So did you had you already went to school for TV production, or was this like after you decided to quit, or was this earlier before you
No,
quit?
I went to Brookdale back in the late '90s.
Late '90s. Okay, that was for TV production,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, media. Yeah.
Media. Okay. So, so Craigslist. I figure when you're putting this ad out for Craigslist, like, so Craigslist they have like what housing, everything. You could get anything there. Actors, you could get hookers there back in the day. I don't know anything pretty much. Like, what kind of response did you have? Like, what kind of people did you deal with at first? Was there like like I know you met some interesting dudes because you met like Ernie O'Donnell, who was that you remember Ed Webb. You remember Clerks? He was the
Yeah.
trainer, and then he was Rick Darris in
Yep.
Chasing Amy, I believe.
Yep.
You met him, right? And obviously Gene Snitsky. But what kind of people, like, what was your overall response at first? Like, what did you have to deal with? Like, as a weeding people out, I'm sure you had a colorful group of responses.
Yeah. So what I did was I was still doing security, and I didn't have time to go and really get involved in the film scene in New York and North Jersey because I had to work. I mean, like I was a workaholic. I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I said, listen, I got a little bit of money. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on Craigslist and I'm just going to put a message out there. And it's going to say, looking for, I have a little bit of money, looking for writer director to put together a short film to film in the Atlantic City area. The response was tremendous. Like literally, like hundreds and hundreds of people were sending me their demo reels and their little short films. And from that, I met up with a writer director by the name of Kevin Oros, and he and I went and started writing a little project together. He originally wrote something called "He Sees You," and I said, "Well, I got this hotel up the street from me in Galloway called the 10 Acres Motel." And I always said to him, "Hey, if I film a movie here?" And they're like, "Yeah, rent some rooms from us, and you can film a movie here." And it had the old like neon sign out front. So we took his script, and instead of making it this hotel out in Nevada somewhere, we made it a little Jersey Shore hotel, and we filmed a movie called Terror at 10 Acres. Now, no one's ever seen this movie except for film festivals, and it won a bunch of like independent film festivals. So we felt comfortable to then start branching out our network and meeting with other people. And what was great about Kevin was he had no problem just like reaching out to people. And so he would go on IMDb and he would find anybody that had a direct contact. And Ernie had a direct contact on there. He sends Ernie an email. He's like, listen, man, huge fan of you and the Kevin Smith films, yada, yada, yada. Would you like to be involved in our film? And then from that, we were able to forge a relationship with Ernie. We met Gene through a combination of the security work that I did and some common friends that we had, Snitsky. And then from there, we just started branching out. And then we just found out friends of friends have connections with other people. So we've always kind of made our thing going after when we make a movie, what genre star can we get in the film to be involved to create a little bit of hype? And what person can we get from the world of WWE? But now, when you go back to the Craigslist piece, some of the people that I go off of Craigslist, I wasn't aware of like Variety and these legitimate sources like Backstage to get actors. I got some maniacs. Like I got people that would
I can
show up.
imagine.
And like I remember this one guy, we did like an audition in a hotel room. He's like, "You want me to do a fight scene? I'm fine with doing a fight scene. Watch this." He blows his head into like a wall, like in this hotel room, and like did damage to the wall. And we're like, "Yeah, dude, listen, I'm going to give you a call next week when we make that pro wrestling movie. But like right now, it's not going to work for what we're doing here." And he's like, "All right, listen, can I use your bathroom?" And like, I don't know if he was or wasn't, but I think he do was bumping lines in there. And like,
Wouldn't be surprising.
just you meet some really odd people, man. You really do.
Yeah, those I remember all the spam you must have had to deal with too. I remember like how Craigslist used to run. I mean, that's and is that your buddy Kevin? Is that the one that you started? So you had was that the Walking? At first, you guys called your film thing the Walking Dead Productions. Was it something like that or
Interesting. Yes. Well, actually, that was my buddy Jason Kerner. That's the
Jason
gentleman that I
Kerner? Okay,
co-created and made the movie 100 Acres of Hell with. Jason still makes movies, but he's up in Jersey. I'm down here in Florida. We still converse regularly. We do stuff with 100 Acres of Hell. He came up with the idea of Walking Dead films, and it was really more an homage to, I want to get it right. There was a movie with like Bela Lugosi or like one of the classic horror icons. I don't remember what it was, who was the star of a movie called The Walking Dead back in like the 1930s. And when he put the name across, we were like, "Yeah, it sounds cool. Let's do it." And then like literally like the week or two after we did that and we formed that company, we heard there's this new TV show from Frank Darabont coming out on thing called Walking Dead. And we're like, wow, it's just like
what a
our
coincidence!
company
And
name.
boom, yeah. And it
Yeah,
was
and
like
then if
the
we got so much
explosion.
hate for that because people thought we were like either one trying to steal from them, like use their notoriety, or two, we were just copycats, and it really wasn't the case. It's just the way it was, and we already had all this promotional material made up. We had T-shirts made up, and then people were coming to us. I remember somebody came to me and they're like, "Hey, can you get me?" This is about like a year after the show now started, and somebody's like, "Hey, they just came out with these new Walking Dead sneakers. Can you get me a pair?" And I'm like, "Bro, we're not that
We're not the
Walking Dead. Like
same.
I can't." Yeah, so then we actually the company name still existed. They really couldn't do much to us because we were actually filed and registered before. I way back. It might have even been a couple years before the TV series. I think we and don't quote me. I think we got like a cease and desist letter, and I think our attorney was just like, "Yeah, no, you guys are predating
You're
that. You
back.
guys are good." And then from there, we just decided we didn't want the spectacle of it,
Why deal with
so
it?
we
It's a shame
changed
you
our
couldn't
company
sell
to
them.
100.
It's a shame you couldn't
I'm
sell
sorry.
them those. It's a shame you couldn't sell the name since you had it first. You could have made a. I could have put out some movies for you with the success of that show.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it would have been great, but it just, and we changed the name, or maybe we kept the name and we did it like a doing business as title. I forget, but we just didn't want. It was too much confusion, especially when a guy like one of our shirts. We actually a lot of people like got shirts from us. I think the guy who played Merle on the show,
yeah, we just
the
talked
older
about him the
gentleman
other.
who got his head. I think he went to like a convention. And I think there were some words exchanged between the. Why was he wearing a Walking Dead shirt that wasn't a real Walking Dead shirt? And once that happened, we were like, listen, man, we just got to drop this name and be done with it.
And you guys, and speaking of that, you guys did the Hotel at 10 Acres, right? So you guys, like you said, it was called He Sees You at First. So you guys changed the
Mhm.
name of the movie because of like, I guess you had seen the burning out sign. It kind of just made sense, right? But the hotel actually, after you guys made that film, they weren't too happy, right? Because everyone kind of
Dude,
linked
you
them up.
did your research. That guy's wife hates us to this day. They wrote a news article and we thought it was so cool. We're like, hey, look, they're doing this in this paper in South Jersey. They're like, this is a great spooky movie. And they describe the whole place, the burned out sign, the derelict hotel rooms. Looks like somebody could be murdered at any second. And let's just say the people that were the proprietors of that business were not happy with us. It actually, we went over there and talked to him. We're like, listen, we're thinking about doing a sequel. He's like, never come here again. Do
You're
not ever
bad.
Wow.
come here again.
But I bet
We,
you
we
people would.
never did. I've never been back.
And they don't realize like if that so say if that movie would have just totally taken off, right? That would have been the best thing for that hotel because
And
I
they
got
have
news
no
for you.
idea the press they would have got from
When
that
I go to
shit.
a town and I'm like, this is where they shot, being from Jersey, right? You have Amityville. So there's the locations for that, right? You know this, like you go see it. You want to stay at the hotels where they shot these movies. People drove to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, it's like it's kind of a cool thing, but people don't get that. And then so
How
next
many
you guys,
people? How many people went and looked for the clerk store?
yeah, I mean, shit, I
Dude, I
mean,
mean, I
Still do.
remember.
still do.
Yeah, that's what
I've
I'm
been to
saying. I
the
mean, it's fucking nuts
Yeah,
how
I've always been amazed by that. I was never, and that was never, I liked Clerks. I mean, I come up that era. I graduated high school in 93. So, like, right after I graduated, Kevin Smith became kind of big.
yeah, same
And
here,
I
same
kind
here.
of
Yeah.
organically fell in with that crowd of guys. Those were like my card playing buddies. And I would play cards with Ernie and all those guys. This is some years later. And I never understood the fandom. I'm not saying he's not a talented guy. He's a very talented guy. It's just I'm a horror guy. I'm not really like a comedy guy. But
right.
like we would be playing like cards, hanging out, doing like whatever it is we do in the Red Bank area. Me and the guys, especially when they were filming Comic Book Man, all the guys would be like hanging
I remember
around, and
that.
like
Yeah, I was at the Secret
Brian
Stash
O'Halloran
when,
would
during
come
that
out.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, what's he working there?
yeah. That was the crazy thing about the Secret Stash. Me and my ex-wife went there, and they were all there. Like it was like you went into the
Oh, yeah.
comic book store, and everybody you saw on that show was. I don't know if they're still making that show. Actually, to be honest,
No, they're
but
not.
no, but there was everyone was there. It was crazy. I was like, oh wow, they had the Buddy Christ over in the corner behind the glass from the Dogma movie. And I think with those movies, like I was a big Clerks fan and all that stuff. For me, it was like it really being a Jersey kid. It really felt like it. First of all, it sounds cheesy, but they always had the Devils memorabilia around. Like it was like
Hmm.
Randall had the Devils hat on. Like there was a lot of stuff there, and just the Asbury Park Press. Just seeing certain things just felt like it. I don't know. It just kind of felt nostalgic as being from there because I remember when those first
Yeah.
came out. Those films. I mean, yeah. So you were up at that. So did you work with any of those guys at the Secret Stash? Did you have anything to do with the show up
Well,
there?
I did. Well, I did never directly worked for the show. So whenever something came up and they needed somebody who was like, all right, so like a perfect example was they did the there was a Guinness Book of World Records attempt for how many Jay and Silent Bobs they could get. And they were going to give Kevin an award for, he had to get a certain amount. It was like 268. I forget the exact number. You're allowed a challenger on the to make sure will you follow the rules of what would actually constitute being a Jay or Silent Bob, certain hair type, certain uniform, costume, whatever it may be. So they have somebody there who's an adjudicator from Guinness, and they're clicking off their number and they're counting the people through. Well, if they say you want to hit your number because you want to win the award, so if they go, that guy's not really wearing the right type of trench coat, I'm not going to give it to you. It would be my job, and I would have to say, no, look, because they're 1998 period, Jay, and I have to show why. So they would trust me to do these things because I was like one of the guys, but I wasn't directly affiliated with the show, so there was no conflict of interest.
Okay,
So
yeah.
the guys would bring me in for little things like that. It was just one of the things I did. And when Kevin would do like autograph signings or a new product launch or something, Ernie and Mike from the shop would be like, hey, Ed, you want to come out for the day and come help us out? And I would go help them out.
Okay, I mean that makes sense. Yeah, I remember reading something like that. And so next you did the 100 Acres of Hell, which was 2019, right? And you had so your first of all, your son was in that movie. That was his first. Was that his first time on
It
screen?
was, yeah, it was, yeah, yeah.
You had your son on there. You had Gene, as we mentioned, Ernie O'Donnell. You also had Catherine Corcoran, which was actually Catherine Corcoran. Ed is I keep on saying Ed. There's two of you, but she's from Terrifier. We actually had David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown, on probably last month
Oh, okay.
on the show. I'm a big Terrifier fan of those films. So she was the girl that gets sawed in half. She was Dawn in those movies. So you guys did that. So you guys made that on like $50,000 budget? Is that correct?
$50,000. And here's the funny thing. Here's the Terrifier verse 100 Acres of Hell phenomena, or as I like to call it. We filmed that movie the same time they filmed Terrifier. Catherine pretty much left like their set and came to our set. And then I think had to go back and film on their set and then come back to ours again. They're both filmed at the same time,
Oh
around the
wow.
same time. I forget where they were doing reshoots or whatever. But anyway, we both had and I don't want 100% shade, but I'm pretty sure both of our films were the world premiere at a thing called the Philadelphia Underground Film Festival, which was run by some guys who had left Fangora. And Terrifier opened the show. Our movie closed, the film festival rather. Terrifier opened it. We closed it. Going into it, the word on the street was, "Oh, you guys have the best movie here. You guys are going to blow everyone away. People have never seen anything like 100 Acres of Hell. It's going to be huge." Except for the fact that our movie played 2 days after Terrifier. And although we had a huge response and it was great, Terrifier became this huge, monolithic thing, and 100 Acres of Hell kind of disappeared a little bit into obscurity. We're still on every major platform in the world. People could see it anywhere they want.
Yes, on
Lionsgate Indican
Lionsgate,
picked it up.
VOD, right, and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, were you surprised? Like I said, I even think Terrifier 2, I thought was great. That movie to me was with those movies, I should say, they were, like we were talking about earlier about some of the movies that we grew up watching. To me, the cool thing about with that character, they found the perfect character in Art the Clown because he sticks out. Like you have the Jasons, the Freddy Kruegers, the Leatherface, all these guys, and they came up with a character that really did. I mean, and obviously we talked about Catherine. Her scene is so memorable in that one. And I didn't know you guys
Yeah.
were filming at the same time, which makes sense because they were shooting Terrifier in Jersey. And you guys,
Mm-hmm.
you guys shot. So when you guys did 100 Acres of Hell, you guys were living up in PA, right? When you guys were shooting that up there, you guys were staying up in the hills for that.
We were staying up there, but Catherine, when you watch 100 Acres of Hell, the campground scenes, which Catherine's included in, were filmed in New Jersey. They were filmed down in the Pine Barrens. We had access to some private properties down there and a hunting cabin. The mountain scenes, when you see Snitsky and the great Samu from WWE, the third head shrinker, fighting it out, were actually filmed at a different time. And through creative editing, of course, we were able to film in two different states, and no one's the wiser. So, yes, we did film for, I think, 2 weeks in Pennsylvania and then a week in New Jersey. We shot the whole film in about 3 weeks.
And they were doing their own stunts, weren't they? You guys,
Oh,
Gene
yeah,
was doing his
absolutely.
own stunts, and you. So you had learned. So when you shot 100 Acres, what did you like? You said you said that you've learned what not to do when making movies. Also, obviously you
Yeah.
learned what to do, but you also learned what were some of the things that you learned. Okay, we can't do this again. This is kind of like the lessons of the
Yeah.
scars.
Well, we thought we were being smart. We wrote a script and created a script for a location that we had. Problem was, right before we went to go film the film, the guy who was allowing us to film in his location said, "No, you guys can't film here. My wife's feeling some kind of way about it, and you can't film here." And here we were. I mean, like literally, we brought people like camera crew and stuff out from out of state, and we're ready to film a movie. And then we're told we can't film there. So luckily, Gene is like the mayor of Northeast PA, Snitsky. He gets on the phone and he's like, "Listen here, we need a location." And he had a buddy who had this mountain, and the mountain that we filmed on was actually better than the original location we were going to shoot at. The place was awesome. We rode up there, we started shooting. It had these old cars. Like the family never got rid of a car; they would just park them up on this old coal mountain. So literally, they were like Barracudas from the 1960s, just sitting there. And just all these old cool Dodge vans and everything else. So we got very lucky. So a lot of the stuff. So we know one, make sure you get your location agreements in advance, and make sure there's some kind of a penalty if the person should drop out on you, because we got really lucky in that circumstance. Two, there was no reason for us to film in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and here. We were filmed. We would go to Pennsylvania and shoot for a few days, and we'd have to go back to New Jersey to film the biker scene because all the bikers that are in the movie are my buddies,
You
and
were
they
a
were in
biker
South
too. You were an
Jersey.
extra in that. You were a biker extra in that,
I was
right?
an extra, yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm not a biker by trade or anything. But yeah, I do play one of the bikers in the film. That is correct. I can ride a motorcycle, but I'm better at crashing it than riding it.
Exactly. Same here. Same here.
Yeah,
Yeah, and with Gene, he was in WWE, right? And he played with Missouri. He played football with Missouri, and I think that he got injured, and he did sign with the Chargers, I believe, the San Diego
he
Chargers. So
did.
that
He
guy's
signed
has
with the Chargers. Yeah, he was on their practice squad. It never worked out. I think he played some Canadian League football, and he he's just an unbelievable athlete. Like he's the kind of guy that could do anything.
Yeah. How did you get involved with him
Just
directly? Like,
because.
how did that happen? How did you get
How did we
involved
get
with
involved
Gene?
with him?
Yeah.
We actually had one. I had a friend that was the general manager of the Wildwood Convention Center where I did security, and him and Gene became very close, and me and this gentleman were close. So another guy who worked on a movie for us was working on a film with Gene. Gene was doing these parts in other films and was like, "Hey, I got these guys in South Jersey that make movies." And I guess Gene went to my buddy, who was the general manager of the venue I was working at. And he's like, "Oh yeah, Ed's a good guy. Give that a call." And then Gene called me, and the next thing you know, Jason and I created the whole concept that became 100 Acres of Hell. Originally, Gene was going to be the bad guy. He was going to be the slasher, backwoods madman. And then as we got to know Gene better, and we saw like what a fun-loving, like happy, and just like really cool guy he was, we're like, you think it would work? I mean, like you were like a notorious heel in WWE. What if
Big
like you were
time.
the hero? How cool would that be? And Gene's like, dude, I love it. Let's do it. Like he was like all about it. And we kind of went away. I mean, we thought all these different things. We were thinking about a priest that may or may not have like hurt kids, and then he grew up to be this avenger, killing priest or killing bad guys. We're like, well, I don't know. That's a little. I don't know if I want to get into that. And then we were like, okay, what about a guy who has a hook for a hand and he's just in the woods killing people? We're like, it sounds like every other horror movie from the '70s. And then that's when we kind of evolved. Well, what if we just had a guy who was the former heavyweight champion of the world? He winds up in the woods, and what would happen if he wound up fighting like Jason Voorhees? And that's where we came up with Jeb Tucker. Jeb Tucker is actually named after, I think the founding guy from Tuckerton, New Jersey was Jedediah Tucker. So we're like, he's Jedediah Tuckerton. And then we're like, that just sounds ridiculous. And then we were like, he's Jed Tucker. And then we're like, okay, he's Jed Tucker. But somebody misheard us and wrote Jeb with a B. And then we're like, all right, the hell with it. He's fine. He's Jeb Tucker. And then that's where he became Jeb Tucker.
And those who don't, and you had Ricky Vitus do the special effects for that movie. What is so? Could you explain the? We didn't even ask actually. So for people who haven't seen the movie, can you kind of give a little idea of what the movie's about?
Sure.
100 Acres of Hell.
We wanted to come up with a film where what would happen? These four guys who used to always go and hang out with each other, they were always together every week, and we call them the Bros. Once a year, they would do this thing called Bros Weekend. One year, they'd go to like Puerto Vallarta. Another year, they'd go camping. Another year, they'd go on a fishing adventure. And they hadn't done it in years because our character, Buck Seaver, had some kind of a family tragedy. We never really get into it. We know that his wife and daughter died tragically some way. He doesn't want to talk about it. And he hurt his back in the wrestling ring. He hasn't wrestled in like 5 years. So he hasn't done Bros Weekend in 5 years. Well, to get him out of his funk, his guys get together and they take him out camping in the woods of Pennsylvania. And it winds up being a hunting expedition. And he doesn't like that because he's he's out of it. He's had a real bad couple of years in his life. And they just wind up pissing off this legendary backwoods madman named Jeb Tucker, who will kill anybody that trespasses on his domain. And it all culminates Jeb Tucker being played by Samu Anawahi from the WWE, The Rock's cousin,
Yep.
and also the third Wild Samoan of the Wild Samoan wrestlers of the 1980s and 90s. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. It really, what we did is we wanted to culminate to what happens these two guys fight in the backwoods on a coal mountain in the middle of Pennsylvania with nobody around to the death. And that the whole movie leads up to that point. And of course, we had Catherine Corcoran, another wonderful young actress by the name of Katie Walsh, and we brought all these cool people together, and we made a fun horror movie. We wanted to make a monster movie, a kick-ass monster movie, is what we wanted to be.
Yeah, and I guess the head of one of the guys is still up in the mountain area where you shot. You guys lost some of the props up there too.
Dude, you know everything. Yeah, we think Jeb's head is
I
still up
don't
there
know everything,
somewhere.
believe me.
Yeah, or somebody absconded Jeb's head. We had three masks made for the film. We had one that was just appliances that were applied by Ricky Vitus. It's for all the close-ups. Anywhere you see in the movie where he's growling and he's in Snitsky's face, that's the appliance that looked just like the masks. Then we had a stunt mask, which was just a cow, where the face was open, but it was his ears, and then the rest was hidden by this skull mask that he wears. And then the third one, which was the most ornate, was the one that you do all the fight scenes in. That was actually a latex mask that was built for Sam's head that fit skin tight, that he was able to do all the fighting in. Sam and his brother Alpha Jr. Also did a lot of the stunt work in the film. Somebody absconded with that mask, or it's a rotting piece of plastic up in the woods of Pennsylvania on this old coal mountain somewhere, and we've never been able to locate it.
Someone's gonna be wasted walking around at some party, and they're gonna see this fucking head laying there, and it's just gonna be, they'll never forget it.
The last time we saw it, Ricky Vitus had it on a pedestal, like a foam head, rather, on like a stand, right next to Sam's face while he was putting the makeup on to make sure that all the anatomical pieces of all the bruises and cuts on his face matched when he put the makeup on Sam. And I remember seeing it was there under the light, under this tent up on this mountain at 3 o'clock in the morning, negative like 9 degrees, because we filmed like in the middle of January, absolutely freezing our balls off. The only thing we had was the actual fire they fight in front of us. The only thing we had to keep us warm up on that mountain. And that's the last time I saw the mask. Just that's it.
You could have sold those props, for those. You could use that for some crowdfunding or something. They always sell the props. That would have been that would have moved. So you guys finished that.
I would love to have it. We have everything else. We just don't have Jeb's face. It's gone. It's gone to the annals of history.
Exactly. Yeah. So you guys. So then you move. So what made you move to Florida? So, okay. We're basically all based out of Tampa. A lot of our topics are Tampa. You're a Tampa guy now. What made you move to Tampa?
My buddy Todd, who's my closest friend growing up, I was best man at his wedding. He was best man at my wedding. I told him, I was like, bro, I'm 40 years old. I'm burned out. I don't want to do the security thing anymore. He's an entrepreneur. He owns several businesses. And I told him, I said, dude, I want to make movies. Like, that's what I want to do. And he's like, come down, work with me, and we'll work together on trying to do the movie thing. And that's who I produced the movie The Beast Comes at Midnight with, and several other films that we have in various stages of pre-production at this point.
Was it easier to film? No, because I figure what? So when did you start filming Beast?
2020.
So I'm figuring
we came up with the design and concept in 2020, actually filmed the movie in 2021, the summer of 2021. We had a year of post-production. last year in 2022, with the COVID restrictions lifted, we actually did very well getting into the drive-in theater circuit. We got into a lot of drive-ins with the film, and now the film just recently has premiered on Amazon Prime.
So I
Amazon
was,
Prime Video.
so I was going to ask you that. So it had to be moving to Florida had to help with the shooting because obviously during that time period, a lot of places you couldn't do this, you couldn't go here, you couldn't do that. Florida was obviously much more open, so that probably helped with the shooting of the film. Am I right there?
We probably couldn't have filmed it anywhere else. We reached out to the film commission. We're like, hey, we're going to make a movie. They're like, okay, follow the COVID protocol. This is what we recommend. We didn't have armed people watching us to make sure everything was 100%, but we followed the guidelines as closely as we could. Remember, everybody was a novice at it. Nobody knew what to expect. And one thing that made it difficult was originally it wasn't supposed to have Eric Roberts in it. It was supposed to have this actor by the name of Robert Bronzi. Robert Bronzi is this guy who looks just like, you can get all of
Charles
his movies at
Bronson
Walmart.
lookalike. Yep.
Yeah, it looks exactly like Bronson. And he was supposed to be our Andras character in the film, but we could not get him here. We pulled strings. We actually had like a sitting, I want to get it right, I'm not sure if it was a senator or a congressman, that was spoke on our behalf to get Bronzy here. We just couldn't get him here because I guess there was some kind of directive signed by Biden's office saying that Hungary was on one of the countries that you could not fly from. And the only way we could have done it is we would have had to quarantine him in Mexico for 14 or 21 days. Then we would have had to bring him to the United States. Then I think there was like a whole thing where he had to be monitored. And we just regretfully, we had to say, Bronzy, as much as we'd love to have you in this film, it's a small film. We can't afford this. Is going to cost us thousands of dollars. He was very understanding. So we reached out and we got in touch with some common friends of Eric Roberts, and we were able to get him in the film.
Yeah, Eric Roberts,
He's
Tampa
iconic.
related story. There's a band out of Tampa actually called the Abortion Twins, and they actually have a song called Eric Roberts, which is totally devoted to Eric Roberts. I just
That's
pop, right
awesome.
when I hear his name, it pops into my head with those guys. But so with that film now, obviously so we're gonna go to the Beast. The Beast comes at midnight, which is a werewolf film. So so you went. There's a place in Florida, which we all know, which is what we call it, Gibtown, or it's the Carney area where basically all the Carneys went, and like to live basically afterwards. They actually have, I don't know if it's still there, but they had the Showman Museum there, which has like the Viking giant carcass there, the old cotton candy machines from the old circuses, the old posters, all the old, like the bearded woman. But there was I don't know if this was the place you guys saw this, but there was another exhibit there, right? That kind of influenced this movie that I guess your son had seen, which was the Wolf Boy. Is that correct? Was it from that area when you guys went to visit that town?
Yes, coming from New Jersey, being a Jersey Shore guy, that's kind of like a carnival town in itself. It's just
Yes.
different. It's a seasonal carny town. As a kid growing up, you love the cotton candy and the rides and the games and the videos and everything. So when I came down here, one being a horror fan and the fan of the unique and unusual, when I was coming down here to Tampa, somebody told me, they're like, hey, you guys know there's like a carny town. So immediately I'm like, carny town? I got to check this out. So like literally the
Gibsonton.
first Sunday that we came to Tampa, I loaded my family up in the car and we're like, we're going to go to Gibsonton and we're just going to see
Yep.
what we find there.
Yeah.
Now we were hoping that we would just see people riding elephants through town, people living in tents, but it's nothing like that. At one time it
Yeah.
was, but a quick Google search on the smartphone was like, there's a museum. We're like, well, let's go to the museum. Literally, we were in town for like 2 days. We drove over. It was a Sunday afternoon. We met a gentleman that ran the museum named Doc Rivera. Doc's the curator of the museum, a lifelong traveling show participant and enthusiast. And I want to be very careful I say it because they're very particular about their lingo. And I don't want to misstate or say anything the wrong way because Doc's been great. Everybody from the museum's great. We went there. I walk in, I'm like a little kid in a candy store. Everyone needs to check this place out.
Oh, it's awesome.
They have sideshow. Have you been there?
Yeah. It was like
Yeah,
$10 to get in too. It's not even expensive to bring.
Dude.
It's a great deal.
If you love taking selfies and pictures, get a picture with a deformed cow, a two-headed lady,
Princess, a two-headed princess. Yeah. Well.
the two-headed princess.
Yeah.
Just the things that are in that place are awesome. Just the signage and those old painted banners. That
Yeah,
you
they have all those
the
old
places they've toured with those.
those big circus banners that used to hang. I mean, I've always been so intrigued by that stuff, man. I remember. Do you guys remember the film "Something Wicked This Way Comes"?
Yeah.
It's Ray
Yes,
Bradbury, the old carnival
yes,
movie. That was. I mean, I never hear about that movie. It wasn't even. It, you know, it kind of actually remind in a way. It kind of has that Beast Comes at midnight. It's not. You can show it to. You know, younger people can watch it. You can have your kids watch it. Pretty much, it's not like. But Something Wicked This Way Comes had that carnival kind of feel to it because it was the traveling circus that came to town, the autumn people and stuff. But yeah, this museum. I mean, like you know, as Big Ed's telling us, it's killer. If you're into that kind of stuff, it's got. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's got so much cool shit in there.
yeah. There'd be no Beast Comes at Midnight if it weren't for that museum. We literally walked in there. We're walking around. We're looking in the mirrors that deform your body, and we're used to these things. We're from the Jersey Shore. You know, we see all this stuff all the time. And to see it all in one location, they have a Ferris wheel. They have all these old rides and stuff sitting in there. And we look up, and in the corner, of the very top of the building, there's an old banner, and it says "Devil's Child, Wolf Boy."
Yep.
And like my son was 10 or 11 years, probably 11 years old at the time. He just looks at me and goes, "Hey, I wonder what the Wolf Boy's up to today." And just kind of like a dismissive little, non sequitur. And then we look at it and he goes, and I go, "Yeah, I wonder what." And literally, we went home and wrote the script that night over like the next week. So then I went to Todd and the guys, my partners, was like, "Hey, we got to make this movie. There's this awesome place over in Gibtown." And that's the beast being born right there.
And you guys, you know, well, you were so I think of like the Ginger Snaps. I actually dug the first Ginger Snaps, which I think that was like 2000 that came out. The Howling, obviously, Silver Bullet, all those movies that Bad Moon, which actually we'll get to Bad Moon because one of the actors is in your movie. And you were also a fan of the Werewolf series on Fox, right? Which only ran from like 87 to 88 with John York and those. But you were a fan of that show back in the day too. Is that correct?
I was a huge fan of that show. Like I loved that show, the whole Eric Cord thing and Scorzini. And at week to week, you were just hoping that he would kill that bastard to get rid of the affliction that he had. I was glued to the TV, and the way they ended that show, like it just wasn't on one day
Yeah.
and was just never on again.
It's how they did it back then, right? I
Yep.
mean, you know, they would just
It
cut off
Yeah,
the
cold turkey.
yeah, and
yeah.
you guys shot 96% of that film in Tampa, right? A Tampa play. Actually, you guys pretty much kept it in house. Is that true?
The greater Tampa area, we shot between Gibsonton and Plant City. Like all the city locations you see in there, we filmed in Plant City, and we call that like our main street in the film. And it's supposed to represent like anywhere USA. And it's supposed to be this like in our fictitious Beast Comes at Midnight universe. Fishhawk and Gibtown touch each other, and Fishhawk is all the rich kids with money and opportunity, and then there's Gibtown who are the carny folk, and no one crosses the tracks from one side to the other. And our main character, Tough, is the son, the lineage of carnival folk. And then you have the kids that are the popular kids from the school. And that's where the interesting thing comes from because when a werewolf starts killing everyone in your town, unlikely, alliances form.
You know, and he has Mr. Webb. He has in this movie. He has. You remember Eddie and the Cruisers?
Yeah, Michael Pare.
Yeah, Michael Pere's in
Yep.
this movie. I haven't thought of
Yep.
that movie in like. I remember there was
Great
one and
actor,
two.
man.
Yeah, yeah.
He's been
I
in a
mean, he
couple different things over the years that were really good. He's really good, man.
he has Joe Castro who did the special effects in this film, and you're a big fan of Joe Castro's work. Is that true, Big Ed?
We stalked Joe Castro to get him in this film. I went to him and I sent him a message on Facebook, and I was like, "Joe, listen, I've been looking at your stuff forever. Your creature effects, I love them, and I want to make a werewolf movie." And he had a little bit of involvement with a werewolf feature. I forget the name of it. I feel really bad because I'm friends with that gentleman. Todd Sheets movie.
Well, I know he
I'm
did
sorry, it's
Blood
going to come to
Feast
me though.
2 and Amityville. He did Amityville Harvest. Yeah,
I
I'm
forget
not
the
sure.
werewolf movie though. He did a werewolf movie with them, and his werewolf effects in that were great. And I reached out to him and said, "Listen, we're making this little werewolf movie. I don't have much of a budget, but I'd like very much like you to be involved." He got back to me, and we had a discussion. And next thing you know, Joe was aboard, and we saw how eager Joe was to be involved. our director, Chris, just said, "Hey, Joe, how would you like to play the werewolf in the film? To actually operate your creature?" And Joe loved the idea. And actually, it kind of evolved into our main bad guy's backstory because Joe became very involved with it. And I think it worked out great because Joe is not only a great FX guy, he's actually a really good actor as well.
And speaking of the story, do you want to give us a little bit on the film, actually, what it's about for those who haven't seen it?
Sure, it's different. It's not a horror movie. It's more like a classic monster movie. It's geared more towards young adults, family, and kids with a werewolf running amok. You have the kid from the wrong side of the tracks, who's your carnival Gibsonton kid named Tough, and he has a podcast. And he starts seeing people are dying in town under unusual circumstances. People are equating it to it's just animal attacks of some kind. And the kid figures out, no, it's a werewolf. And he winds up banding with these popular kids in town because they know that the werewolf is after one of them.
And your son is actually the kid, right? Michael, your son is actually plays tough in this movie.
Yes, he plays tough.
Okay, so yeah, you guys did that, and you guys it's directed by Christopher Jackson.
Mhm.
And he was also involved with remember that show, Mr. Webb? Remember the In Betweeners? He was actually on that show, which was like I think that only ran for a small amount of time too. That show, but he was on that. And like I said, you guys mostly is that kind of like the idea you guys have when you're doing these films? Like I know even like you guys, like I said, in house, Florida wise, you guys even use Florida caterers, right? You guys pretty much try to resource everything to the Tampa area when you're shooting those films there.
That is accurate. We wanted to touch as many Florida businesses, Florida locations, and Florida people as possible. Much in the way that when we were shooting up in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, I wanted to showcase those locations. And I can really attribute this a lot to Chris also, because I would have just filmed the whole movie in Gibsonton and a little bit over in Fishhawk. And he actually expanded it by saying, it would be great if we used the natural springs over in um, that's the one time we went out of like Hillsborough County.
Is that Crystal
We went to the
River,
springs. I'm sorry.
Crystal River, or where else would they?
Yeah, Tiki, where the what's that called?
Oh,
Wikiwachi.
Where the mermaids are from. Wikiwachi.
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 Wikiwachi. Yes, thank you, Ed. Wikiwachi. And what's cool about that is that's also the same springs where they filmed the original Creature from Black Lagoon.
Yep.
So
Yep.
although it's not the exact same body of water, it's the same town and same series of springs where we filmed. So I just think that's kind of a cool Easter egg and a cool thing to be involved in, especially with the Florida aspect, because I think the Creature from the Black Lagoon is just one of those classic Florida horror pieces.
Yeah, I always talk about now. Actually, we could talk about with this with you too. Are you a big fan of with the remakes, right? Like everyone's remaking movies now, and I know for myself, I'm kind of like I'm one of those stubborn. Like I haven't seen Ed's always telling me it's good. I've
They
only
did
seen
it.
the
They did it.
original.
I mean, they kind of did it okay. I mean, it's if you are a Tim Curry like fan, then you're a Tim Curry fan. You know what I mean? That's just it was the difference is Tim Curry in makeup is what you got. Now you've got CGI with
That's the thing,
Skarsgård.
CGI.
And,
Like
but they did it okay. It wasn't done bad. And fucking the way he did it, the way he makes his eye fucking really, you know, it's not CGI'd. He like freaks. I have a lazy eye, so I know what that's like to look at somebody, and when you give him that fucking eye, it freaks people out. And I don't know. I like that. To me that wasn't a bad remake, but like some of them are just fucking so. It's like
well,
why,
it's
like
CGI because I know that even with the Beast, you guys use a lot of practical effects. You guys pretty much try to keep it all practical, right?
We actually went into it saying to ourselves, we want a furry creature movie. We want like when the kid gets smacked by a werewolf, we want a kid to get smacked by a werewolf. Um, and that's what we went after. Now there are some CGI and VFX in there, but for the most part, we wanted it to be a practical effects movie, and that's why we wanted someone like Joe Castro because that's what Joe's known for. Joe creates monsters and builds monsters, and that's what we wanted.
and that's what Damien does with the Art the Clown movies. He takes so much time to make all those props, for the movie and shit. I think that's what made the original thing so great because when you look at the like when they released the making of the thing, and I watched it, to me that was so intriguing to go, holy shit! When you see it in a movie, you don't realize all the no CGI. It was all fucking props.
Yeah.
Well, look at Evil Dead, the original. I mean, that's what I always
Yeah,
say. It has such charm to that movie. It's like it's. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. I love like when I saw the remake. I did see the remake of Evil Dead. They did maybe like 15 years ago or something, or I might have been not that long ago, but it seems like that long ago now. But it was just like just the blood and stuff. It just looked so computerized. I just couldn't. I couldn't get into it. So are you big? How do you feel about remakes? Because I've heard your take on this a few times. Like you're not against them, but like okay, I heard you guys talking. I heard a discussion about the Universal monsters. I'm really afraid for people to remake these movies because I'll admit I am the like my wife will tell you I like the old silent films. I like the black and white. It's hard to get younger people to sit through some of those films. So, are you pro remaking some of those older films like that?
I am. I am. And the reason I am is because I think the only way you're going to get in front of modern audiences with these classic characters is by doing it. Are they all hits? No. Are they all good? No. Are some of them downright terrible? Yes. But some of them are actually good. Look at the Dawn of the Dead remake. The Dawn of the Dead
Yeah.
remake was awesome. I think it actually reinvigorated the whole zombie genre. Without that, there probably wouldn't be, there would be no Walking Dead, truthfully, in my opinion, if it weren't for the Dawn of the Dead remake. I think that made zombies hot again.
plus the characters. You got to have the right people playing the right parts. I mean, Ving Rhames. You know what I mean? When he, some of those guys. I mean, when you look at those movies when they remake them, if you have the right people playing the right parts, I think that helps sell it too.
Yeah.
Because if you just get a
Yeah.
bunch of people who people aren't familiar with and you try to reinvent the wheel, sometimes it just falls flat. I've seen
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of
Well, even
movies.
like the, yeah, even like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, was that 2003? I think
Yeah.
they did great. The Friday the 13th remake, 2009. I thought that was really good.
That sleeping
I
bag
actually would have
scene.
liked to have seen that series continue. I would have liked to have seen what they could have done with that. I like how they took it and they kind of took the story of the first three movies and just kind of pushed them into one film. I thought that was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm still my. I saw my daughter. They had it on. She had her friends
Oh, with
over,
no
and
Robert
they were
England,
sitting there. And
can't
I,
do
I
it.
came out there and I saw it, and and listen, I like the dude from. He's been in. He's a great, phenomenal actor. I'm not going to shit on
Jackie
his
Earl
acting.
Haley.
Man, he is fucking great. But when I hear him
Yeah.
try to do the Freddy, it's just I just go. Now, of course, they're freaked out. They're young. They're 17 years old. They don't get the original Freddy. To them, it's more scary because of the CGI. My daughter goes to see the Nun movies, and what was the other one I always tell you about, Tony, that I can never fucking remember?
Oh,
Um,
I haven't
with
seen
the
it. I
older
remember.
lady,
I
with the
know what you're
old
talking
lady, and
about.
they
I haven't.
always go back into his dreams and shit, and they just make fucking 100 of them now. I'm just like, I
See, I
just
think Halloween is the most disappointing. I think the latest. Of course, I like the
Rob
first two
Zombie.
Halloweens. No, yeah, no, I didn't. I really, I love Devil's Rejects. I love House of a Thousand Corpses. His Halloweens was like it was, but I like the. I actually love the first three Halloweens. Sorry, I have Halloween decorations going off as I speak in here. Um, so I love the first two, and I love Season of the Witch, which I think is a great movie.
31.
Maybe it's, yeah,
As do I.
yeah, I love Season of the Witch. Maybe it shouldn't have been called Halloween, I guess, but it's a great movie. Um, but I was
Well,
disappointed
it
with the
fits in
last
what
Halloween.
Carpenter wanted to originally do. Carpenter wanted to make each
Yeah,
film a different story around Halloween. Just the studio pushed him into doing an immediate follow up with Michael Myers in part two.
yeah, exactly. No, you're exactly right. But the last Halloween, I don't know. It was hard for me to. That's the thing is like I have felt like some of those Hollywood ones are just pushing so many out that they just lose their flavor, I guess. And I love Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, like that. She's great and stuff. But what did you think of the latest Halloween that came out?
The Halloween series, I saw the one in 2018. I liked it. The second one, that whole evil dies tonight over and over and over again. And also, I mean, I don't want to give up any spoilers, but I'm sure everybody's seen the movie. The unceremonious ending of Tommy Doyle, who's like, one of the main characters of the series from the beginning. I wasn't in agreement with that. But the third one ends, not saying it's a great film, but it's shot in my wife's hometown in Georgia. And that's like the biggest thing that has ever happened to that little town in Georgia. They've never had anything of that magnitude happen there. And to have it associated with the film that is so polarized by the horror community, I think is a huge disservice.
Yeah, I know. I totally get that. So yeah, you guys. So you put out the Beast. You guys what? You guys have showed that at, like you said, drive-ins. You guys have really, like, how do you get your films in drive-ins now? Because I would think that would be more difficult than it sounds.
Yeah, we it was interesting. We decided, being in the game a little bit, when you hand your film over to a distributor, it's a whole new world of. Uh, it's the best way to say it. It's not as lucrative as you would like it to be. The film itself can be lucrative, but it's not lucrative to you as a filmmaker. So we decided that everything we were going to do, we were going to do ourselves. We were going to be our own aggregator of content. So that being said, we had to think like the big boys. How do the big boys get their films into theaters? And I could go into hours about how they do it because they have the whole industry locked down. They control those theaters. But if you do it right, there's various associations for these theaters. And we went and introduced ourselves to an association called UDITOA, which is the United Drive-In Theater Owners Association. And we actually bought a table and had 300 theater owners there with us at their table at their convention. And we networked with all of them. And then from that, we were able to get direct contacts and we were able to find the theaters that would be open to showing independent content.
Okay, so I mean, you guys got it in there. I saw that, and I mean, so how important with these films that how important is like the funding? Like, you got to find what? So is it hard to find people to, like? You got to find investors, right? It's very big for the independent films, and you have to. So how does that work? Is it like, is that you have a certain time period? Like, you guys say to yourself, okay, we would have to have this film done by this time period, so we need to pursue this and this. How much of a chore is that, or is it easier than it sounds to find people that are willing to invest?
You can find people that want to invest if you properly do it. You have to do pre-marketing. So you'll see, like, we have other films that are in various stages of pre-production right now, or even um, development would actually be a better term. And you have to start creating the buzz for it in advance. Like, pretty much, I could say, "Hey, I'm going to make a movie tomorrow about a clown that backpacks in Europe and just jumped on, a helicopter and then flew." Just make up any ridiculous thing you could think of, and you have to build a concept for it. Now you have to develop a script. You have to come up with a poster. You have to find some people that may be interested in being in that kind of film so you can associate their name with it. And then once you start bringing all these pieces and elements together, your audience will define themselves. Your audience will come out and be like, well, I happen to love backpacking clown movies. There's an audience for everything.
Right.
And once you find that audience, that's the people that you go after. And those are the people that have businesses that will support that. And when you
That
reach
is
out to that business, would you be interested in sponsoring this film about this backpacking clown in Europe? And I'm just making this up right now because it's just funny.
yeah.
Um,
Right.
and then you will actually find the people that want to aid you in your journey. And you keep putting that positive energy and that good mojo out there, and then the people will find you. Now we have certain people that we can go after that are private investors that are just kind of open to it. They're either lovers of film, or they're just interested in supporting the overall effort, or they want to see a business relationship with you because they see what it is you're doing to make great things happen. So you just kind of have to define what it is and be realistic. You can't raise $1 million for something that isn't going to make $1 million. You have to know where your profitability stance is, so you're not asking people to invest in something that will be a complete loser. And
Yeah,
I'm
because
sorry, this dog just started yelling out of nowhere.
oh no, it's okay. I can't even hear the dog actually.
Hey,
Yeah, I don't even hear it.
you didn't hear the dog? I'm
No, I didn't hear
sorry.
the
It just
dog.
was
No, you're good.
flying.
Nah. And that's the hardest thing, right? Is you have to get the fans to buy into. I think that's the thing is, like, when you get a fan following, as we've seen with all the movies that are like the legendary characters. That's the thing is you have to get the fans to buy into the character, and that's once they do that, that kind of takes the, you look at You go to conventions, what are you going to see? You're going to see 50 Michael Myers walking around. Now you're going to see about 50 Art the Clowns walking around. You're going to see Jason Voorhees walking around.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
just,
sorry, guys. It's crazy here. It sounds like something out of The Howling because I
that's
think someone
okay.
just pulled up in front of the house. I'm not expecting anyone, so
I know.
and I'm in the middle of nowhere. So can you hold on one second?
Yeah, no problem, man. Do
Yeah.
what you got to do. Yeah, that's the thing, Ed, is like getting the people to buy into you have to basically have that character just basically not be able to leave your mind. Like you think of like just I mean, I think of like the Funhouse movies. I loved Funhouse growing
Yeah,
up,
those were.
and
Yeah, sorry,
Funhouse.
I'm in the middle of nowhere. So like when a car pulls up here,
No
you need
problem.
to know why a car pulled up here.
Yeah, exactly. And it says, yeah, that's where are you. So
Even the
you're in Florida right now. You're in Tampa area. You don't have to tell us
Yes,
where you are, but you're in
yes,
Tampa.
I'm in Lithia.
Okay.
Lithia is where I am. Yeah,
uh,
but I'm not in the Fishhawk side of Lithia. I'm in the rural section of Lithia.
Okay. So what's next for you guys? So what is Showtown America Pictures working on now? I thought I had seen that you guys had what was it? Another Bitter Souls? Is that a project you guys are working on?
It is. We actually pushed Bitter Souls back because we're working on something else right now. The actress that we're working with, her name's Averiana Rose. She's a social media, I don't want to say influencer. I think that's an overused term. She's very popular. She has a popular YouTube channel. People love to see her posing in various different fashion shows and things like that. She has millions of followers. But it's not like we just went after this actress and said, well, she has this huge following. Let's try to capitalize on that. What we did was she actually auditioned for The Beast Comes at Midnight, but she looked too much like the other girl that we'd already cast in the film. Both girls, same color hair, about the same height, about the same build. It wouldn't have worked. So we kept in mind and we said, you know what? I think I'd like to develop something for her because she was really good. She did a great reading, and that's how we developed Bitter Souls. And I kind of like see something and then I'm inspired by it. And when we were shooting The Beast Comes at Midnight, we shot in a metaphysical shop that's now closed down. It was called, I forget, I'm sorry, it was out in Lutz. Sorry, I forget the name
No,
of it,
it's
but that's
okay.
where like Andros's shop is in the film. And they had a room that was devoted to voodoo stuff. And I said, well, that's our next movie right there. We're going to make a voodoo movie and we're going to make it in this fictional town, R. Gibsonton. So now there was a werewolf and now there's going to be some voodoo. And then in the future, there'll be some vampires and then there'll be a sea monster. So kind of that's where it came from. So we had that film, Bitter Souls. We pushed that back because we got funding in the meantime. We got green lighted to do a film called Siesta Key Slasher, which
I lived
is
in
a
Siesta Key.
murder mystery that's like I Know What You Did Last Summer, except framed in an event like Gasparilla. So these kids show up at like a Gasparilla type event, and then during it, there's a hooked madman pirate on the loose killing people, and then you got to figure out who the killer is.
oh
I lived
wow.
in Siesta Key for like a year, and I
Yeah.
hope that you guys are gonna. It's very like richy, like drink wine on the beach. Everyone's very fancy ass there. You could do some cool stuff out there, I'm sure, with that whole. It's a pretty place though. Siesta Key is a pretty little area. But
Yeah.
I lived up there for like a year actually.
That's
Yeah, so
cool
you guys,
going after Gasparilla too, because that's a Tampa folklore.
Yeah, well, we don't know if we can use Gasparilla. We're not sure if
No, I
it's
mean that idea,
trademarked.
just
Yeah,
that
we've reached
idea.
out to us. So ours is going to be a pirate festival in Tampa, and whether it'll really come down to how much clearance we get and how much access we get, depending on what the name of the event will be in our fictional story.
you guys
That's
shooting
cool.
Ybor at all yet?
I'm sorry,
You guys shot in Ybor City yet?
we have not. We actually Bitter Souls is supposed to start off. Our fictitious shop in Bitter Souls is supposed to be in Ybor City because we wanted to tap into. There are some voodoo roots there. There's a Cuban form of voodoo, and we
Big
were going
time.
to incorporate that into the story.
They have a
But
taxidermy there too. It's
regretfully,
pretty cool.
there's a store there. What's the name of that
Yeah,
store?
I can't think of the name of it. It's a taxidermy over by the old Orpheum. Ed,
Yep.
do you know what
Yeah,
I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's well known. And it's
Yeah, they
creepy.
got the glass windows. Like it's like
Yep.
Doctor something, Doctor
Yes.
Oddities or something. I actually reached out to them, and somebody wrote back to me and was like, "Oh yeah, no, we'd be interested in hearing from you." And then I could never get a response back. And that was the first place we reached out to for Beast, and then we decided to film at the place in Lutz. Now, the interesting thing about the place in Lutz, regretfully, it closed down recently. They're only an online store now. When I was there, I was like, didn't they film Edward Scissorhands here in Lutz? So
Yep.
while I was there, we filmed this. We were filming scenes, and they didn't need me there. I'm just a producer. My part's done. I created the thing. Now I'm just there. I'm in the way. So I was like, I'm going to take a ride, and I'm going to go find out where the Edward Scissorhands house is. So I set my GPS, and it's like, you are 9 minutes away. I'm like, well, I'm going to go ride over and go see the Edward Scissorhands house. I get out, I pull out on the highway. It makes me do a turnaround, makes me do another turnaround, makes me do it. Next thing I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm right back by the parking lot, and I turn at a road right near the parking lot. And then I drive behind the parking lot, and there's the house from Edward Scissorhands. Literally, I'm like, wait a second, I'm filming right, but you have to go down a highway, around the
Yeah, that's
highway,
how
just
it
to
is
go right
down
where
there.
I could have walked over there.
Yeah.
So literally,
That's
the house
Lutz.
from Edward Scissorhands is like literally, I could throw a stone from where we were filming to the place, and I just thought that was cool because I never knew it was that close.
Yeah, it's over there. I do know it's over in Lutz.
Lutz was, years ago, Lutz was not developed. It was, those houses looked like those houses. It was now just like Gibsonton. Gibsonton wasn't a developed place. It was a carny. Like, it looked old. And now when you drive through
Yeah,
Gibsonton, it looks like Tampa. It looks like everywhere else. That's what they're doing to Florida is they're kind of fucking making
yeah.
everybody come here and just suck up land and build apartments and take up my streets. Because
That's how it
man,
works.
Yeah.
I hate driving in this town, man. I got to be honest with you. Driving in Tampa sucks.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an interesting point. We hear a lot about traffic up in New Jersey and New York area, and the only place I really hit traffic up north. You always see the pictures on TV of the traffic backed up for miles. Unless you're going like to or from a Giants or an Eagles game,
Yeah,
it
to the
doesn't really
city.
happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, or you're going into New York City, but you're driving. Of course, you're going to sit in traffic. You're driving into New York City. It's the most
Right.
popular city on all of Earth. All right,
no
so
matter
you
what
get
time
stuck in
it is.
traffic for an hour.
Or if there's an
You're
accident
getting
on the
somewhere.
turnpike, if there's an accident on the
Yeah,
turnpike, you're screwed,
yeah,
but
but you
that's like
sit in
anywhere else.
traffic in Florida for
Yeah.
an hour, and where are you
Oh,
getting? It's like I just sat in traffic for an hour. Where to get to Starbucks?
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was flipping out today, man, because I had to go to my dad's house and I was on a time schedule for this. And I'm like, really? Real? I drive down Bush Boulevard opposite Bush Gardens. There's a high school there. And I'm like, why are we stopped at fucking 4 o'clock in the afternoon? And it's just traffic for as far as I can see. And you can't turn. There's nowhere to turn. And I'm going,
no,
and that's when my stress
it's
level
insanity.
fucking, I lose it. I lose
Yeah, I
it.
don't miss
Yeah,
that. I don't miss
No.
that. When I go back to St. Pete, I'm always like, here traffic's, it's bad, like, but nothing like St. Pete was or Tampa. Um, and Ed, you also worked with, so you also had some kind of things going on with George C. Romero, right? Did you guys build a studio? Is that correct?
we were in discussion to build studio. We were trying to get involved in the city was going to offer a grant to build a studio here in Tampa. They wound up sealing I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but they wound up not allotting that money. If we had gone for it and wrote out the business plan, I think we actually would have stood a really good chance of getting that money. But they tabled the initiative and chose not to do it.
Okay.
So we're still looking at doing some other things with George and the Briefcase Pictures label. But at this time, we're concentrating on the actual films as opposed to the development of a studio. I believe that will come in the future
And the Beast came
because
out on
our films
Briefcase?
won't be enough to support a studio. We'll need our films and other filmmakers to support that studio.
Okay. And you guys put out Beast on Briefcase, is that correct?
No, The Beast Comes at Midnight is released by Showtown American Pictures,
Showtown?
which is
Okay.
actually the company that produced it. Yes.
Okay. So like Tampa actors, like, is there, like, what could you say, like, if people are interested in working with you, is there a place they could like send? How does that work with you guys with Showtown?
What we do is we're really open on our social media. I actually run all the social media. If you send a message to the Beast or you send a message to any one of the Showtown pages, anything that has to do with one of our films, I run the social media. So what we do is we're very open. The Beast comes at midnight. We did all of the casting right there on our social media. And of course, because it was during COVID, we didn't do too much in person auditioning. We did a lot of it virtually on the internet, which was a new thing to everybody. But we put the casting calls and we're like, here's what we need. We need a 16-year-old girl, this kind of look. And we built like a little banner that we put up on there and all the characters we needed. And then everybody sent us emails. Now, I personally responded to every email. I think we had 867 emails. And I
Jesus.
personally responded. And from there, I broke it down to the best 20 for this character, the best 20 for this character. And then we actually did auditions online where we would open up a thing. Nobody else saw anyone else audition. We were able to do it on Zoom. We would open up the lobby and we would be there with the director and the other people and kind of give everyone a fair opportunity to try out for the part. And then the people that we liked, we actually called in person. And then pretty much when they nailed it, we offered them the part.
Okay. So what do you guys? So coming up, what do you guys have? Anything like coming up next that you want to say, or like all the places they could visit your sites or your for information on Showtime?
Sure. What you want to do is you want to go to showtownamericanpictures.com on any one of our social media, which is both Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Please follow all if you like. And also sign up for our newsletter on our website. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And then before I really put out a juicy tidbit on our social media, I drop it to the people that are on our mailing list first.
Okay. Yes. Showtown. I'm sorry, I said Showtime. Sorry about that.
Everyone does.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a tongue twister, but yeah. So you guys. So that's yeah, Ed, man. We really appreciate you
Well,
coming on. Like
Showtown
you
is
said.
named after Showtown. Gibsonton was known as Showtown, USA. So that's the
Ah.
reason we went with Showtown. Yeah.
Ah,
We actually wanted to name the company Showtown USA, but Showtown USA is actually a copywritten name owned by a bar in Gibsonton itself. That's actually
oh,
their Carney bar. So we're using we've used Showtown American Pictures.
That's got to be nice to have Gibsonton right there too for you guys, because that's kind of like a Honeywell. There's just so much history there, and just like we were talking about earlier, just cool stuff you can pull from that area. Um,
If people support us, we're going to make it our own Hollywood. Tampa will be Los Angeles, and Gibsonton will be our Hollywood. We feel very confident that if and when we build a studio, it would be a great location from it. One, it's close enough to the Tampa airport. Two, there's still enough property out there where it could be done. It's rural enough, and people have really cool stuff out there. People with exotic animals. There are people with old cars. There are people with all kinds of stuff related to show and traveling stuff. And the museum itself is an amazing resource. So that's kind of our unofficial home base at this time, and then we'll see how things go forward.
awesome, awesome. And what do you guys? Are you guys ready for Thanksgiving this week? Before I let you guys go.
Yes, yes, I'm ready. Are you all ready?
that's my cheat day.
That's your cheat day. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the day where
I've been building up to it.
the old yeah we're doing it on Saturday here. We're gonna do it a couple because obviously we have here they don't celebrate Thanksgiving, so we can do it whenever we want. So we're doing it on the weekend. But have you guys seen? Actually, have you guys happened to see the Thanksgiving movie that came out from Eli
Yeah,
Roth?
yeah.
I have not seen it yet. Is it any good?
It's pretty brutal. Are you into are you into some of those brutal films because like I said, I love the Terrifiers. I mean, but there's a sense of tongue in cheek with those movies. It's not like you're not watching. I don't know if you guys ever saw the Serbian film, which is just fucking disgusting. It's like just some films are just, but they're kind of the thing I love about these movies like Thanksgiving and these Terrifier. It's they have
The
that
Halloween,
'80s total
they're
'80s feel to them,
holiday
which is
movies.
great.
Yeah,
Like it's got
Yeah,
that.
well, I think they're getting a lot of heat right now with Terrifier 3 because
Yeah,
the
the
teaser
opening scene.
you
yeah.
don't actually see him hack up a little girl, but it
You have to
alludes to the
question.
fact that he hacks up a little girl.
Well, in All Hallows Eve, remember he's juggling around the kids'
Yeah,
heads in the first one.
yeah,
So they, I mean, but I think with those, he kind of does it smart. Like if you look at part two when they do the shooting scene, it's adults playing kids. It's not really kids. Like there's always, but yeah, that
yeah,
opening scene, you kind of wonder to yourself, like, what's going to happen here? Because there's really where do you go from the last one? It's kind of that
yeah.
kind of thing. But Yeah, man.
Well, he's got to be careful, or they have to be careful because they're actually getting studio backing now. And studio is much different than truly independent because, they
See,
have
I
to
had heard
worry
they're going to
about
pull
people.
from the studios now. I heard they're not going to go through the studios because the opening, I
Wow.
guess. So what we had heard last week, we were talking about this on the show actually, is Damien had, I guess, talked to some studios and they knew what the opening scene was, and they're like, we can't do this. And what he had said and what I had read, he said this isn't even the worst scene. Like the
Exactly.
opening scene's not even the
Yeah,
it's not even the big kill scene. So that's the thing now is, and with the Thanksgiving movie, it's pretty crazy, extreme, like, but it's done. It's almost done so extreme that all you could do is laugh about some of it. I
Yeah.
think that's how
Yeah.
it
I
works.
like you were talking about like a Serbian film. That's a bit much for me. I think
Yeah,
I think
same
there's a
here. That's
fine
just like
line between fun and mean spirited, you
something that
know?
makes you leave feeling like total shit. Like I'm not in, like that's what
Yeah.
that's like. I remember when I actually like, and some of our listeners may like that film, but I was totally not a Serbian film guy. I saw it and I was just like, my buddy who gave it to me to watch, I was like, I don't even want to like something you wish you didn't see. It was like one of those, like when you're a kid, you
Yeah.
see Old Yeller and they take the dog out and put the bullet in it. You're like, I just didn't need to.
Yeah.
It's one of those
rough
fucking
mice and
films.
men.
Yeah,
Lenny.
it's like the shit that lasts forever,
Yeah.
man. But no,
Yep.
but yeah, Ed, we really appreciate you coming on, man. And if you have anything,
Thank you.
obviously you're welcome on here. Well, I'm sure we're going to
Thank
keep in
you.
touch. We do this show like usually
Me
a
and
couple
Tony,
times a week.
me and Tony have a great scene
Excellent.
for a movie. We have a great scene for a movie.
Okay.
Oh
The
yeah, you could
total,
kill the
basically,
podcasters.
we always wanted to be the guys that talk shit about the fucking murderer. Like let that motherfucker.
Mhm.
Because they call me Angry Ed. I'm not, but they like to
Mhm.
think that I'm a fucking asshole. So I'd be the guy on the
Okay.
podcast talking about let that motherfucker show up here. We'll see what happens, and then he shows up and just fucking mutilates me. That would be awesome.
Nice.
That
I
that would be
actually like that.
awesome.
That'd be fun. It'd be fun if you film it too, the way you have it right here on the screen and you're seeing
And
her because you could really go wild in that little space.
Ed
Yeah,
does do nude scenes. Ed will do
yeah,
nude scenes.
yeah.
So.
I wear assless
Oh,
chaps.
okay.
Assless.
Yeah, so
All right.
he's down.
What was
But,
it? Assless chaps because we're here in Florida.
yeah, exactly. It's
All
too hot.
right.
Oh
You got
yeah,
to stay cool, man.
man. That's one thing about you got to say, Big Ed. Like moving to Florida from Jersey, man. That heat, like I was just because it's really cold where I'm at now. I'm like, I don't know what's worse. Like I hate being cold, but goddamn, the summer sucks. When it's like
Yeah.
103 and no mercy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like.
Yeah,
And we made the mistake of filming in August too.
Oh, I
oh,
That
think I
was,
read that. Yeah, you did what Beast you
so it
guys
was,
did in the hot months, right?
yeah, it was 100 plus or it was pouring rain. And then when it was pouring rain, it was still 90 something. It was
oh
just
yeah. That
pouring
doesn't cool
rain.
anything off. Yeah, rain
Yeah.
doesn't cool anything off in Florida. As a matter of fact, it makes it like a sauna. That's all it
Yeah.
does.
In New Jersey, it rains, it drops 15, 20 degrees, and then it
Yeah,
stays cool for the rest of the day. But
yeah.
not here.
Not here.
No.
Nope.
We had a guy on our show from you remember it's actually a Jersey band, Overkill. You remember Overkill from Jersey?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The band. Yeah.
So we had Bobby Gustafson on here, and he had a band afterwards, and he had gotten some shit for the band name, and it was called Satan's Taint, and he lives in Florida now. So we were talking about this, and the reason he called it Satan's Taint was because Florida is so hot. He said that it related to that. It was nothing to do with anything else. It was a heat related
Yeah.
band name, which that's how. Hey, Florida is. Between that, we were talking last episode about the palmetto bugs. There's just shit in
Oh,
Florida that's got its own
yeah.
thing. So.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
don't
and you
piss
just
by.
don't know when you're going to come across an alligator
Well,
or
yeah,
a
don't
wild
piss.
cat. Like these
Don't
aren't things you have to worry about in New Jersey. You
No,
know?
no.
do you
You
guys
get
see
out.
the
You come
lady
out your
get?
back door and piss by the lake, and the guy gets his fucking arm bit off while he's pissing. I mean,
There was a lady the other day, like 2 weeks
That's
ago. I saw
crazy.
that was getting drugged through the street. She was half eaten. Did you see? I mean, I
yeah,
feel bad for
yeah,
her
No,
family,
I
whoever
didn't
that
see it.
happened to.
Oh, I missed
Yeah,
yeah,
it.
in
Yeah.
Florida, there was an alligator walking through the road, and they had a
yeah.
torso.
They
They
had
had
her
a torso
remains
in
in
its
her
mouth.
mouth. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
I did see that.
yeah.
Yes, yes. I didn't know that was Florida. I just saw the video clip. Oh,
Oh
man.
Middle of
yeah.
the
It's all
day, middle of
Florida.
the day. It's always
I
Florida,
mean,
man.
hell, what was it? A few years ago, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, where they were at that Florida resort, the Disney resort, and a little kid
Awful
went down
story.
by the
Oh,
water, and fucking
Oh,
guy drug in and was gone.
oh.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
imagine
See,
that.
no,
that's
that was the week I moved here because I remember that happening. And I remember hearing
Yeah,
that on the national news when I was up in Jersey. And I remember I called my buddy Todd and I was like, dude, is this an omen? Like, am I not supposed to come to Florida? I mean, so we just got eaten because he and I were always talking about, like, I'm like, dude, I don't know anything about alligators. And then all of a sudden that news story happens. I'm like, you
Awful
know,
story too,
Yeah.
wasn't it? It was
No,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Now that I have kids, man, it's like that was just, that was just an awful story, and
Your
I
kids
yeah,
just,
don't
it's
play by
horrible.
any water in Florida except the beach.
Well, I think the worst part is I think the parents set the kid up to take a picture, right? Isn't that how
yeah,
it happened?
Well, and
yeah.
but it's Disney. It was Disney, so it's supposed to be protected. What you
Yeah.
call it, but it didn't happen that way.
Oh, it's just that's a
Said is
awful.
said.
That's Florida for you, unfortunately. But yeah, no. But like I said, Ed, we appreciate you coming on, man. And anytime you want to come
I
on,
appreciate
when
you
you
guys.
get your next films together or whatever, if you're looking for casting calls or whatever, just get a hold of us and we can, get you on here. We, like I said, uh we run pretty much like every week, and we keep on. We're doing basically a mix of like music and horror movies, 80s, whatever. We just kind of do what we want. We're kind of figuring it out. But yeah, man, we, like I said, dude, we really appreciate it. And anything else you want to say before we let you go? Because we've kept you for about 2 hours now.
No, no, no. I just appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody listening. Everybody, please just check us out at Showtown American Pictures. Support us. We're always looking to support other people. You'll find out we're very interactive on our social media. If you need a shout out from us or you need us to get, I mean, we have a few thousand followers ourselves. So anything we can do to help out anybody in the music community, the film community, the entertainment community, we're always happy to do that. So we all need to support one another, and we're here to do that as well. So thank you, gentlemen. I hope we keep up all of our interaction together because I'd love to discuss things further.
Hell yeah, we're definitely down.
Absolutely.
We, like I said, we appreciate the time, and for everybody who listens, thank you for listening to the Tampa Morgue. Ed, where can they find us at?
Apple, Spotify,
Apple
Prime, Amazon,
Podcasts,
frickin'
YouTube.
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the Tampa Morgue at gmail.com. I don't know. I think that's it. I got to
Yeah,
start writing this shit down because there's too many.
we're getting too old. But
Yeah,
everyone
fucking
have a
right.
good
Too old.
Thanksgiving, and we will be back next week with Bill Owen from Purgatory. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Big Ed, thanks again. Everybody, check out Showtown America Pictures, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.
See ya.